Mentality is so strong,
So
you will never evolve in your mentality. You're very much a victim.
Okay.
You're giving your oppressors all the power over you, and you're begging them for help, for reparations.
I got you.
You didn't get
I'm not
you
a
didn't
victim.
listen.
I'm not a...
Content of everything! Content of everything!
This is intense, but you've got to calm out. I'm going to tell you something about my history. Right?
5p an hour, people work.
Hold on. My mother was mixed race. She grew up in Cornwall in the fucking 80s. Like, once she was the only black woman.
Oh, you have to speak loud.
She was the only black woman there, you know what I mean? So she was pushed in and all that sort of stuff. And then I came to live in London.
See, mate,
I spent all my time around like Jamaicans, Africans, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, Asians here and there. I've been all around the community. All around the community. And there's racism on both sides. You know, absolutely, both sides. So, but when you bring all this shit about politics, fuck what happened.
Louder, please.
Fuck what happened 70, 80 fucking years ago. Still a
No.
You see how you are.
Guys, we'll answer. Guys, we'll answer.
He hasn't said anything, let him speak.
It
still affects us.
It affects us in a little bit.
No, it affects you a little bit.
Go tell a Syrian, go tell a Libyan, go tell an Iraqi, go tell an Afghan,
Go to Yemen. Go to Palestine.
go tell Yemeni, go say to a Palestinian, come on, go tell an Israeli. You live in a bubble, my friend, called London. We are comfortable.
Right, finish this point. Okay, right. You're next.
Okay, I'm next.
Yeah, go.
Okay, so my point
We live
is,
in a bubble called London.
I want to make one point, and it's a shame that James isn't here to hear it, because what I want to point out is one of the things to strengthen his argument is what's happened in this debate. Now, I don't agree with him, but what you'll notice is that people who come...
If you don't agree...
Let me speak. Let
You
me
see your
speak.
reactions.
Let
You want to be heard, but you don't want to hear.
You haven't even heard what I've said, and you're disagreeing with me. So what I'm trying to say is, and I absolutely understand it, if I came from Yemen, and my family were getting bombed from Yemen, and Britain was selling Saudi Arabia weapons, which they're then bombing my family in Yemen, I would be angry at the government. And what we're seeing in a multicultural society, all the different collective identities have their own vested interests, which are completely understandable. So my interest, as everyone knows here, is Israel. So when stuff that happens in Israel, I feel it. And so if the British government was to go against Israel...
And you're born in England, isn't it?
I would be conflicted. If the British government was to go... If the British government was to go against, I'm not going to assume I know where everyone comes from, but I know that you come from Afghanistan because you've told me. Yeah. And you probably still have family in Afghanistan, yeah?
Relatively.
Yeah, you have it. And so if Britain then started dropping bombs on Afghanistan, I would absolutely understand your anger and your pain and your outrage at the British government. I'm just trying to make a point. So what I'm saying is, what you've heard is people that tend to come from Muslim communities, from African
Jewish
communities. No, let me make my point, Mo.
No, Jewish communities.
Let me make my point. People who come from communities that have felt the negative impacts of the British Empire are quite hostile, and I understand that hostility. And my point is very simple. When you create this multicultural society and you create collective subgroups within that who rally around an identity, you can create conflicts, and this is exactly what's experiencing here. He's saying that as a white Englishman, although he didn't say English, he said a white Caucasian,
from Switzerland.
Yeah, from Switzerland. He feels all this negative experiences in society. People who experience British society in a different way are saying, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. We haven't worked. So my point was, okay.
Because this society claims a free society. A free society which anybody can come to this society as long as they obey the law of the land. They can practice their religion. They can express themselves, and they can say whatever they want to say. But the indigenous man who doesn't agree with that ideology, because when the Muslim or the Hindu or the Sikh or the Jewish comes and they practice these three rights, he says, whoa, he's taking over my culture. He's taking over my this and that. But he should say to the government that don't advertise this country as a free society. Advertise this country as if you don't look like us, if you don't walk like us, if you don't talk like us, please do not come.
So I'll come back to that. Do you believe that you're English? Are you an Englishman?
No, I'm not.
No. Are you British?
I am British,
Which revolves around the citizenship, yeah?
Yeah.
And so I think his point is he's speaking behind that. So when you get to the point of
English.
citizenship,
He's talking about English.
he's talking about
Native.
Europeanness, and they're two very different points. And you're right, a society can determine who lives within that society.
Yeah.
And the society can say it practices all these civil liberties and everybody can practice whichever religion or what. But there will be consequences to that. And this conversation is the consequence of that. And just to finish my point, which I was trying to make before I gave you the lead, is...
No, but he's conflicting
No,
culture with values.
So I just want... One of the things that I want to point out is, and I understand where it comes from, you as an Afghan, look at what happened in Afghanistan, and you look at who's responsible, and you say, okay, Britain was involved in much of it, Russia was involved.
Not just Britain.
No, not the USSR. I, as someone who's very detached from that, look at the Taliban, and I say, well, the Taliban was instrumental in both of those. Where's the accountability there? It's Saudi Arabia that's bombing Yemen. Why is Britain getting the blame?
Britain's selling the weapons to Saudi Arabia. They're facilitating it.
Exactly. No. If I sell someone a car,
When
and
a
they run someone
society
over,
claims to be the pinnacle of humanity, when a society claims to be the pinnacle of morality and justice, they don't contradict themselves.
I'll just complete my point, and then I'll give it to Rajiv. My point is, what you create when we create these multicultural societies is conflicting interests, and this conversation is a manifestation of that. You're saying that Britain has all these wrongs and need to make reparations. The gentleman was saying we, but I suspect he was not. It wasn't his ancestors that voted Churchill in, although Churchill wasn't voted in. And so my point is really simple.
What?
That we create. These multicultural societies create their own problems, and that is the manifest. This conversation is manifested.
No, we're saying
give me 2
Britain.
seconds.
What do you mean? I didn't even get
I don't
you.
agree with you.
What did you conclude in your... I didn't even get you.
Well, you didn't get it. That's your problem, man. I did get it.
What we're not going to do here is have brown people come with 3 points to the Westerners' 1 point. We have asked him for various examples. He wasn't able to give them. We've asked him for various justifications. He hasn't been able to give them. Mo has come with context as to why Afghans feel the way that he does. He has come with context as to why his people feel the way he does.
But he didn't.
But he couldn't.
I know.
No.
That doesn't mean there is.
So he's
If you're
wrong.
going to act as if you're going to act as an intermediary,
with him.
don't be biased.
Thank
and
you.
Joe, you are showing your bias
Yes.
today. One second, guys. Let me finish. You're showing your bias
What am I
today.
saying? What am I saying, Rajiv?
Defending him.
You said,
I'm not
you said
defending
this
him.
conversation is a microcosm of what this
He loved
whole
that.
political tension is like. And this is how this gentleman feels about the whole thing, yes?
Kind of. I'm
Yeah?
saying, I'm saying there are conflicting interests
No
in
worries.
multicultural
I
societies.
pointed to you that he has come with no justifications, no
I agree.
validification,
I agree. I
no
don't agree.
point.
He was a terrible ambassador for his
Why are you
country.
trying to explain him?
But you are trying to
No,
explain
I'm
the
not. I'm
fact
responding to
that,
you,
I
not
will
to
ask
him.
you.
No.
As people who are trying to play, what's the word? I guess devil's advocate, right? I'm going to ask you to justify his points. I'm going to ask you to validate everything of what he said.
grief.
Because he has come with the fact that Britain funds certain military arms. Britain has caused destabilization. Britain has colonized certain places and put people in proxy of power, right? And which has left certain effects. Absolutely. Which has left certain effects. You laugh, Pablo, but I'm coming for you as well. You see certain effects ongoing that you, right, as a Western society, have not addressed. You do not address your politicians. You do not address your politics.
Our
You do not address.
our politicians.
Yes, your politicians.
No,
Is there
not your. Our.
Is there not an EU? Is there not an EU?
Are you not an English citizen?
So like,
Are you not a citizen? Here?
British.
So it's our politicians.
I don't vote.
Why not?
I don't vote.
That's a problem.
Kind of looks like a
I
contradiction.
specifically don't vote
Okay,
because.
Rajiv, you're telling me
One
you'll
second,
come with me.
Pablo,
Let me come to you.
There's a reason for this.
But he needs to justify his grief.
One second. I'm not finished.
That's not what he
I'm
did.
not finished.
You guys didn't understand at all.
No,
what
I've
he was
been patient.
trying
I've
to
been
do.
patient.
Just like you
I've been
didn't understand what
So
I
I
was
will ask
saying.
you.
Pavlov, you believe you
said-
don't even exist.
No, I want to ask Pavlov.
You
because,
see,
Joe,
you go to ad hominem because you have no arguments.
Okay, none of
Why
you
are you
hold
still
it.
here? Just
you
leave.
need
Just
to
hold this,
control.
hold this,
Okay,
and
you
then
need to
hold
control.
this. Hold
No,
this.
Joe,
Order. Right.
Can I conclude?
You make me laugh.
Can I conclude that we have given this guy a fair chance to explain himself, to justify his position, to actually try and bring out what he feels is being wronged in his society and where unification or whatever is needed. We've given him given him an opportunity to do that. He hasn't done
So,
that.
if you recall, I actually went to his point and told him why his political philosophy was
I'm
stupid.
not saying, Joe.
So I'm not defending
no,
it.
he's not
No,
saying
I'm asking you.
I didn't
If
hear
you're
him
gonna
defend
play,
him once.
devil's advocate,
I'm not playing devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate.
Yeah, That's right. That's right.
So I'm not
Forgive me if I'm
That's
wrong.
not what he's doing.
Forgive me if I'm wrong. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But you said that this whole conversation is the problem.
No,
I'm asking you, what in particular is the problem when this circle has given all of the valid
Reasons.
all of the reasons,
Why
all
I'm
of
here.
the points,
Why I'm in
all
this
valid.
country.
None of you have challenged that
Facts of
as to
suffering
why
that go around the
his
world.
society is burdened by the guilt it is. He hasn't been able to argue that.
Right, okay, we've got the point.
Very quick, because it was directed at me. I just want to
That
respond.
wasn't even my final point. I wanted to address Pablo.
I want to
address Pablo now.
No, you had enough, Joseph. You had enough.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet.
He addressed
Wait,
me.
you have to
Go
wait.
ahead.
He addressed me.
Yeah, don't.
I'll wait.
So you the point I'm making is in your language. You keep on saying your society, your, not me, not our. And that's my point. As long as we retain this society where we are not part of the same
We
collective.
speak his language because he wants.
I'll answer this.
You were allowed
I'll
here.
answer this. No worries.
Just live the life you were offered.
I'll answer it.
What? Why do you attack the host country so much?
let me say,
You were
What did I?
allowed here.
What
You're a
did I
migrant
attack?
just like I am.
Tell me, what did I attack?
You were attacking
No,
the host so much.
I want to make my point, and I want to make it really simply.
The confusion we get is between values and culture.
You're lost.
Guys, let Joe speak. Let Joe
then
speak,
I'll just
and
finish
then
my
I'll
point,
answer
then
him
I'll-
because I genuinely know. I know where he's going, and I'm ready for this. So please answer the
my God,
question.
I'm leaving.
So my
I
point
had
is
enough.
really, really simple. When I was born to British parents, both of my parents were British citizens. Any privilege that I have, if you were born of two British parents, and I don't know your background, but if you were born of two British parents, you have the same privilege as me. So if I'm reaping the benefits of a colonial past, so too are you, or anyone else that has two British parents.
Not in all
And if you then separate yourself, if you then separate yourself from wider society by saying you James, and I fundamentally disagree with almost everything he said, but
so why are you
you,
defending him?
I'm not defending him. If you can't
You don't
comprehend it, I'm not
understand what
defending
he's
him.
saying.
It's going over
You
your head.
refuse to understand what he's saying.
So
refusing. I've got this.
if you
Bro,
separate,
you guys are.
if
I
you
need to be stop Muslim. I know that. You said that. Don't worry.
so
Yeah, and you said that submission is necessary.
hey,
That submission is necessary in a society. No control.
You're not defending this guy. We've got that point. We've got that point. All right, so we stop there.
move
Now,
on.
Pablo.
You want to talk to him? Then talk to him on the other side.
But
We can
can I
understand
finish
your
my point? It's not that what I'm doing is it's not both James and some of the gentlemen on this side of the room
Here we go.
are both segmenting and dividing society around collective identities. He's saying white identity.
Yes.
Over here, some people are saying, well, you've oppressed Muslims. What we're doing is we're dividing along identities, and there are conflicts within those identities. So what I'm saying, Mike, just 2 minutes. All I'm saying is really simple. You stop. If you exist in British society and you reap the same benefits as everyone else, you can't use the language you because your skin is white. It's us.
Yes,
Because we belong.
because
to
I
that.
live in the society. If I move from the society, I don't get those privileges.
Can I quickly
Absolutely, yeah.
point out?
So what it means that when you come to this society, you only get the privileges. You don't get the privileges when you're out of this society.
One second.
Can we have a time out?
That's my point.
Time out.
Where are we with this?
Are there
I have to stay in his society to get the privileges.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah.
Are there any white nationalists here to speak on behalf of white nationalism? Are there any white nationalists here?
I will put it straight away. I don't think there's anybody so delusional here.
I'm putting one out.
Can I say?
I don't
think there's anybody so delusional.
Call a spade spade.
Hold it.
Are there any black separatists as well on the other side?
Call a spade spade.
Is there anybody here willing to represent white nationalism and white views?
I think we have an apology.
What?
See, that's interesting. Nobody's here.
I'm being honest.
So there's no white people here.
Yeah, there's also white people.
If you're white, hold it.
They're all left. I see they're all left.
No, listen. I see three. The term white nationalism is nonsensical by itself. As I said before, nation and race are not the same thing.
Is there anybody here? Excuse me, you sir. Would you like to represent the white race? Would you like like to represent the white race? Is there anybody here?
Stop being a Muslim.
Who can represent?
You know what happens?
Would you like to represent the white race?
Come on.
Would you like to represent the white race?
Guys, can I quickly address Joe?
Right, okay.
I think you need the invitation.
Would anyone like to claim to be a neo-Nazi?
Mr. Chairman.
Order.
I'm waiting for you to address.
I'm back in the parliament.
On the right, order in court race.
Thank you. From the gallery.
The white
Thank
race.
Am I what?
Representing the white race.
The white race?
Yes.
You are white. Yes, I am white.
But when you say the white race,
No, he's not.
Yes,
Okay.
I do belong to the white race.
Okay, so you speak to the white race. Okay, so we only have one person here.
No, but
who's speaking
I
to
see
the white
three. What the
race.
hell are you doing?
let's
What
just
the hell
go
are you doing now?
Because people keep talking about this guy who's now gone.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
Not you, but the guy who's now
It's fine.
I see three. They don't agree with the guy that's gone. But I understand why he's angry. And that's what I wanted to tell them. But they refused to understand it. And they didn't listen to this guy. They didn't listen to him for 1 second.
All right.
They didn't listen to you. They didn't hear
Okay.
William.
Right, so
William Wallace.
there's nobody here.
Excuse me.
The
The
white
white
race.
nationalists will be heard.
Guys, let the chief speak. I'm waiting to get addressed.
There's
I'm waiting
no
to
white
get addressed.
nationalists.
There's
No white
Okay.
nationalists. End of story.
Right, okay, right. So now, what's the topic?
I wanted to address Joe on the fact that you said that
Yeah, but the debate's
it's a thing of
Guys,
greed.
guys.
And
You're right. You
I
are
see
right.
this. I see
Rashid's
this a
got the
lot.
mic. Rashid's got the mic.
Right.
I see this a lot. I see this a lot when it comes to narrative
back in the
of
parliament
people
now.
who aren't, I guess, from not native or
A
whatever.
massive majority of
When the accusations are being laid, the foundation is being built for an argument, it's always portrayed in this idea that it's aggressive. We see this in the park everywhere. When gang has a debate with anyone, it's fuggery, it's whatever, right? When Tan came to the park and was yelling NY, N, whatever, right? You weren't there in the beginning. As soon as he mentioned, I think you know what I'm talking about. You were there the week after. So when you're talking about it's a we narrative, you're completely contradicting your presence in this park because you only seem to be present when it affects Jewish culture. So I will continue by saying when you say we, and if you're born to a British mother and father, and I'm born to a British mother and father, we reap the benefit of that, right?
Yeah.
What happened with Windrush?
He has a bit of a point.
So no, I think Windrush was an absolute disgrace.
But this is me giving you examples of how we don't benefit the same way you do from this
so
society.
what benefits do I have?
Not you in particular. I'm talking about white sector people in particular.
But that's my
White
point.
sector.
This is the point I'm trying
go.
to make. You are fragmenting society. When you
I'm
do
not
that,
fragmenting. I'm
you
not
know,
fragmenting.
You fragment society by white.
Can you give me an example as to how I'm fragmenting society? Because right now
You
I'm
just
giving
said
you.
white.
Is there not a white sector of British people?
First and foremost, there's not a sect of white people. They're a white people. They're not a sect.
So under certain forms. Correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't say white British.
No, but
it
that's
doesn't
not
say.
that's not what a
It
sect
doesn't
is.
say black British. Right? So we're talking about demograph. If you want to get semantic about it, if you want to get semantic about it, I can do that all day.
Okay.
Right? But you are saying that it's a we argument, as if we as minorities affect the government as much as the biggest sect of British culture. No, we hold you accountable because you are the majority say. What you say politically goes.
So
in
what is my
in
sect?
comparison, 1 second, Joseph, one second. Because you weren't even brought into this discussion.
Yeah.
It was the gentleman here,
Yeah.
Pavlov in particular. I don't know why Pavlov was brought into this because he's.
Maybe because it's Speaker's Corner.
Because I'm being misunderstood.
No, I'm talking about why he
I
was
was
brought
in the conversation.
It's been going on a long time. This
Before
discussion's
him and
been going on for a few hours.
Chief,
Before I came back.
We were addressing the gentleman in particular and addressing what he claimed to be British culture. That's what we were addressing. And we were addressing the fact that they have the majority political sway as to what should happen with our government, with Parliament, right? So when you bring up this whole it's aggressive, it's a we narrative, not a you. I think again you're missing the context in which we are bringing it through. And it's not even an accusation context. It's a question of why is there not any pedestrian action opposing the political actions that we disagree with, because the majority of people were against the Afghan war, but we still went anyway.
Okay.
That's the question. So, do you mind if I quickly go to Pavlov, just because he has been waiting and we have been going back and forth? I'm very happy to come back again. I'm very happy to come back. So you said that it's almost, I guess, not nonsense, but it's a bit nuanced, this whole kind of like historical burdening of guilt and all of this stuff. It's irrelevant, it's completely unnecessary, whatever. And people can't give you a reason as to why we should hold on to it, right? I can give you a legal reason. I can give you a constitutional reason. America's first constitution is every man is born equal. Yes?
Slavery.
Yes?
Yeah, that's what it's written.
It's perfect, it's perfect. According to their own constitution, the first constitution written, right, and Americans hold themselves very high with their constitution, etc. We hear it every other sentence. They then are obligated to treat, slave or none, every man equal. So under their laws, every person that worked in labor, right, whether you're a slave, whether you're a indentured servant, whatever, was entitled a minimum wage. So a reparation constitutionally, a reparation legally is owed to the African American society. Whether or not you like it, whether or not it's a nuanced argument, whether or not we want to claim victim narrative, let's just go to the legal basis of it.
I got a question.
Damages, give me 2 seconds. Yeah, you can do that. Damages were there, people's lives were lost, but we can't necessarily do that. Let's just go to the people who were there, the 12 million or so who worked the land, right? Indentured servants, what did they get after 7 years? They got land and wealth. They also got paid for their labor. These people didn't get paid for their labor. People didn't get wealth for their labor. People didn't get land for their labor. Not allowing them to build the foundations that white America now has in comparison to black communities.
So can I ask you?
So the question is, on a legal grounds, not even on an emotional basis, on a legal grounds, on a constitutional grounds, where is the reparation?
Well, what reparations? Hang on. Can I just
Also, the goalposts are shifting here as well.
After this guy. Yeah, after this guy.
Right.
Right. Would you like to address that and then after it go to this guy?
If you cannot dissimulate, you cannot reign. King Louis IV, King of France. Now, obviously the Americans are a bunch of fucking liars. Nobody's saying the contrary. And nobody's saying the West didn't do anything bad, and nobody's saying the West is perfect good and they should be followed in every single way. But now, you are here. You are in the West, you're living with Westerners, you're staying on their soil. Why would you go so far as to ask for something that you know, deep down you know, it will never happen, it will only make your situation worse, it will only... You see, you can't bear it, you can't bear it, you cannot bear it.
No, I agree with you.
You cannot bear the truth. You can't bear the truth, guys.
That's not the truth, that's an opinion, so let's not say this, let's not say this fact.
Let me finish.
Let me get to the end. Let me get to the end.
The reparation.
Let me get to the
What
end.
is the
I will
reparation?
never
Hold
explain. If I'm not given any space to explain.
What is the reparation?
We can actually, we
Guys,
can,
let's go.
we can estimate a reparation.
But what is it? What do you
We
want?
can. Wealth, land,
let's hear
etc. We can quantify it, but
Let's
please,
quantify the reparation.
Let Pavlov finish.
Are you ready, Pavlov?
Pavlov,
carry on.
then
Sorry.
you, and then you want to
Let's
speak.
go, man. Come on.
No, I can't speak
or
when
no?
other people
Alright,
are
we'll
speaking. You know, I've been shouting today to be heard, to be understood, but it's useless. It's useless to shout. Nobody will listen to anything. Sorry?
Go ahead. It's fine.
I will. I will.
Everyone's had a
You
fair
guys stop
space.
interrupting. I'm not going to shout anymore. I'm going to just say what matters. You are living here. The West has oppressed other people in the past. Why do you think the Western media is attacking their own people now? Do you not think that if they still attack your people right now, that their media has a reason for making their own people guilt-tripped, making their own people hate themselves? Perhaps the reason for that is because they have a hidden agenda, something they want to achieve with it. And you are playing part into it like a small little pawn, without even thinking, why are you asking for reparations from the Westerners that will never ever happen? Have you ever thought about it that way?
No.
No worries.
Alright, cool. I don't need to hold. But you haven't told us.
Yes,
What
that's the concept.
The person you're arguing has to hold the other side.
It's a bit distracting.
No, that's the whole point. That's the whole
I know, I understand the
That's
point.
the order.
I like to
Detail
it didn't work,
reparations.
did it? So I like to
That's
move
what
my
I'm
hand.
talking about.
So,
I want
anyway,
reparations. What do you want?
Wait.
Can I, after
Sorry, Derek, carry on. Yeah, sorry.
Pay back.
Okay.
In other words.
Cool.
What do you want?
So let's go.
Tell us.
Anyway, so something you're saying. So you were saying about the legal aspect you're talking about, and you know what you describe. I think anybody with a fair mind is going to see it as great injustice, what happened in the USA and anywhere that would be considered slavery. And there's many injustices in the world, right? So obviously I can't dispute that. I think the only sane discussion to have is what changes you can really make and what effects they will have. Not in theory, not what you would want, not your ideal, but what would happen in reality. Because everybody knows you've got an ideal and then you try and do something and it changes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Nothing ever goes to plan. Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face. Now,
Until they're punched in the
and
face.
this, what I want to say to you is there's more things to say, but this primarily is maybe in a part, I think you're right, but I don't think it would work in practice. My question is this: where would it stop? Why would you not be able to continue to go into history and to look at every point of oppression and unfairness and ask reparations from that next person? You understand? It doesn't. Why would it stop there? It would have to continue.
Through the chair.
You understand me? I don't see why it would stop.
I want to ask a relative
Can I?
question.
That's
No,
my
can I ask a relevant question? I want this man to carry on, but I want to ask you a question because it's based on what you're just saying.
Tell me.
I'm going to repeat this question, and you're going to have to. If you're here making the word reparation, what reparation do you actually
The same
want?
reparation that the
answer my
Jews
question,
get.
though?
That's the ones that
Guys,
Come on, bring it out. I want to know what.
Guys,
no,
guys,
this is relevant. This is relevant.
Guys, I've laid the
relevant.
foundation. I've laid the
Because
foundation
I don't
for
want to
this
hear a
conversation.
generalised word.
What's a generalisation? What's a generalisation
I want to
about?
know what's real and practical.
What's a
What do you
generalisation
want
about
as
minimum
reparations?
wage, about land, about wealth? What is a minimalisation about
What
that?
do you mean the Jews get?
millions a year.
Guys, you are giving him space.
You don't want to speak.
You are giving him space. You are literally giving him space.
I asked the question. I respect him.
No, I will ask you.
Thank you.
Throughout my first statement, it was not at all vague. Land, labour, minimum wage,
How does that work here?
all of these.
How does it work here? What land? What labour
Are you talking
here?
about? What are you talking about? The UK?
What do you want here?
I'm
for
talking about the
example?
USA.
Okay, so in the USA, what do you want?
Say that again?
Give me specifics. What you're looking for, Rajiv,
Land.
as a reparation.
Land,
How much?
labour, the minimum wage. So, okay, give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. No. Let me explain. You brought up,
very
right?
fair question.
You brought up the fact that where does it stop, where does it begin? I laid a very simple, and you should follow this. It's a very simple one. The society at the time laid grounds that all men are equal. Now you can go back to other societies and prove to me that they had the same system and the same constitution, but you won't be able to. I thought about this question, and I thought about an actual legitimate way as to how America owes reparations. They had a system. They had an obligation to pay everyone the same. So when you ask, what do we want? We want the same treatment.
How's it going to happen?
It's as simple as
How
that.
are you going to achieve it?
It's as simple.
How are you going to achieve it?
When you say how am I
This
going
is
to...
relevant.
Do you want me to answer you?
Yeah.
Brilliant. When you say how we're going to achieve
Yeah.
it, right? There's an estimated number. There is an estimated number of people who work the lands. Yes?
Right. Okay.
There's an estimated time of people who work the lands. Yes? We already have the minimum wage. Yes? It's already a mathematical formula already, right? We have the land as well, the amount of land that was given to people who were indentured servants. Yes?
Right.
What stops you replicating that to the same individuals who weren't given this?
How is the American system going to give you this in its current structure?
I know.
It's next.
You just said you won't tell us.
He's going to tell me. You told me you're not going to tell me. He's going to tell me.
The cooperation between the US and Israel is based on interest.
Rajiv,
not
how
on
are you going to
fucking
do this?
reparations, man.
I'm focusing on Rajiv because it's his point,
So,
really.
if you want a dogmatic answer, I can give you a dogmatic answer, right?
Right, go on.
But if you want a more complex answer,
I want a
you're going to have to
structured
rephrase
answer.
your thing.
How are you going to
more
make this a
complex.
reality?
Now,
Right.
William has just clearly pointed out a very good point.
Right.
To invoke these kind of reparations, right? Considering the money back then, what it would be translated into now, it probably wouldn't happen. Because it physically can't happen. That's too much money to take out of a society too quickly. So we'd have to, like William said, introduce policies that help that community further themselves. Not what you said in particular. Introducing rules and regulations or whatever that can slowly alleviate the situation.
I want to address my point though.
I want to work out the practicalities of this, which is what Pablo was saying.
Can I just quickly add some context?
Do you want a dissertation as to how we're going to do this? Yeah, even though. From the beginning of this conversation, you had no idea about the whole formula, the fact that the first constitution said X, Y, and Z.
You're coming to me and saying, if you came to me and said, Ian, I want reparation off you, come up with what reparation are you asking from me? That's what I'm saying.
No worries.
And how are you going to get it?
I've given it to you in a simplistic nature, right? Let's just say I'm not even going to be hospitable about it. It's your obligation. It's your obligation, constitutionally, to provide the wealth that is owed to the people the same way you rewarded the indentured servants. It's not about how you do it. It's your problem. It's your problem. You created the problem by causing... No, wait.
This is the absurdity of the conversation.
But if you want a dogmatic answer, you're going to get a dogmatic answer. If you want a complex solution...
Forget complex dogmatic. The absurdity of this is there is an assumption of guilt on his ancestors.
It's not an assumption.
No, there is an assumption of guilt on his ancestors based on skin colour. So to come to this gentleman's point, that basically pulls it in. He keeps mentioning Jewish reparations.
I don't even know why everyone's running. I've literally given you. I've given you a basic formula.
Let me just respond.
I understand, but don't respond out of context. Go ahead.
When it comes to German reparations or Swiss reparations against Jews, it was against individual families and the actual people that oppressed them. So in the instance of slavery, if it could be proven that his ancestors were slavers and there is a direct, unbroken chain of him going back to slavers, then yes, you maybe have a point. But to make an assumption of guilt based on someone's skin colour is problematic.
Okay, brilliant. Guys, brilliant.
2 seconds, bro. Joseph, thank you, but I'm going to ask him again. How practically are you going to do it?
No, because you're saying...
No, Joseph, we've had various times where you've made assertions, but no one has said anything along those lines. So can you tell me...
Well, you kept on saying you pay reparations.
But where was the skin colour brought into it?
Because that's the only thing that separates him from you.
Is he not playing an advocate for the states right now?
But I've got no solution for you for this reparation.
Is he not playing an advocate?
Who is paying the reparations then? Let's just get to the point.
How are we going to pay it? 1 second, Joseph. He said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? So your problem is not how he's saying, how are we going to do this? Your problem is with me saying, how you should do it.
No, so my problem is basically
can I say something?
When the bankers...
I'm not playing the victim.
1 second.
I'm talking hypothetically.
When the bankers brought
who are you going to get the reparation off?
Into a recession, who bailed the economy out? Who bailed the state out? The government. Through who?
Through taxation.
Through taxation.
Yeah.
Who pays taxes?
All of us.
The people.
Everybody
so what's so complex about
so in your reparation world, would the blacks be paying taxes that then go back to them in reparations?
I'm imagining they would be exempt.
So the black community would have an exemption on tax.
For your own reparation.
What about the rich black people?
And then the rest of society, and that's the you.
Yeah.
Who aren't black, therefore they're, I assume, white in your case, and not the Chinese who were also forced into labour in America.
But the Chinese would then have their own way of arguing the fact that they don't owe the reparations. But no, it's not an absurdity. No.
You're going against the wrong people.
Again, we said American white society. We've made that clear throughout. I don't really understand why you're throwing Chinese into there. I don't even know why you're throwing Hindi. I don't understand. It's a simple fact. It's a simple fact.
On the railroad.
One at a time.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to finish it.
Finish your point.
Whether or not you're responsible.
Finish your point.
I don't really care if you're responsible.
That's what his point is.
I don't really care if you're responsible. I don't know why you're bringing yourself anecdotally.
But you're talking about a word. I'm sorry, Rajiv. I'm sorry. I'm going to make myself very clear. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, Rajiv, I'm going to make myself really 100% clear.
Where did you bring yourself into it?
You are using a word.
Where did you bring yourself into it?
You are using a word.
I brought up the American states.
You are using a word about getting back something you think you're owed. How do you practically think you're going to do it? This gentleman from the gallery said, I'm not going to tell you. You're now going to tell me how you're going to get this.
I've literally just...
American taxpayers,
I don't understand.
Through taxation.
American taxpayers.
You're next.
American taxpayers.
I don't understand. I don't understand.
American
Everyone's been interrupting me. You haven't said anything to them.
He's been going on like an
Okay, don't ask him to get the question. He's got the question.
Right.
We've got the question.
Let the man speak.
Now, address the question
Exactly as I asked it.
I addressed the question. I've already addressed the question.
Have you already addressed it?
People keep interrupting. You haven't mediated to stop them so that we can have a fluent dialogue. If you're going to mediate everyone.
Don't tell us.
So I'm telling you quite clearly that the American state, right, the American state, because it's in your constitution, it's the American state. Are people in America not part of the American state?
But there's black people who are part of that now American state.
Because they're living in the privileges.
Hang on. Are you going to blame the black slave traders who traded blacks? There were blacks who traded blacks, for example. So again, we're talking about skin colour.
You genuinely want a simplistic answer. You want a dogmatic answer. You don't really care for complications. I've literally explained to you the formality.
But you want something I think isn't going to happen.
Literally,
it's impossible for
I don't care if you think it's not going to happen. I don't really care. Because you couldn't even formulate. You could not even formulate how the people were going to pay it off. You could not formulate why.
Taxation.
Wait. I said taxation. You didn't listen.
I got that.
And then you kept asking, how are they going to do it? How are they going to do it?
Exactly
So you heard me.
taxation.
So you heard me. So you heard. So you heard me. You heard me. All right. But you decided to go on.
Yeah, all right. That's right. He heard you.
So my question is now. My question is now.
I want to make it practical.
That's fine. I've literally laid it down. Formality. Just pretty simply. There was a minimum wage. There was an estimated amount of people.
Okay.
Very simply.
Yep.
Your laws say that everyone should be treated equally.
Yep.
You pay them the same. That is it. How we implement it later on, we can do it so that the economy doesn't crash. It's as simple as that. We can go into the conversation after that. But your question is saying that it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen.
How do we pick who to give the money to?
Just to build on to
how do we? Have we got a list of every family? No, this is very important. No, this is very important. But it is important. How are you going to physically find the people that are entitled to it or not?
I think everyone clearly here has problems that's happening around the world.
You've got to pick everybody.
And that is more specific to them.
Who are you going to pick?
And I think the issue is it's like this gentleman said, that we have to come with practical solutions, at least for us, between us in this circle, to understand and agree with.
Yeah.
And I think number one is that I think before we try and go back and say, oh, this happened in history, because we should say it did happen and it's documented and whatnot.
It's happening.
But that's exactly the problem is more than that it's happened. One second, can I say it? Because you're just saying one second.
I know.
The problem isn't that I think it has happened and we can go back and fix history, but there's no way we're going to fix and give a fair reparations and stuff to people.
Why not?
Because we're still corrupt. We are still corrupt. Now a second.
Okay.
I'm not
Why does he deserve a reparation more than me?
If it could happen to the Jews, they get actually the money and the land. European assembly. They give the land.
That's another debate.
Hold
If it can happen to them, what can happen?
I think we need practical solutions. So, and I think
I'm waiting for a practical solution.
I think with Joseph, I don't agree with Joseph on most things. On one thing I do agree with is that when we're speaking here, as a black man, as an Arab man, as a Jewish man, as a white man,
ideally just
all right,
as a
we
human.
should speak as British people, and we should speak as us. Okay. Now the problem is that our government today, all these problems we have, all these issues we have in our lives, are the cause of not black men or Arab men or white men or any men who of skin color. It's the politicians. They've turned us against each other so that we sit here. And I think we've made it easy for them. We've made it easy for them. No, because wait. Can I explain why?
Can you explain yourself?
Tell me why I'm wrong. I think number one, our government, all right, it supplies weapons to Saudi Arabia. I'll just give you examples so you understand why I'm saying this and I'm correct. Our government sells weapons to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia bombs Yemen, all right? Our government supports America in its war in Iraq. Our government is part of NATO, which bombed Libya. So all these people, all these immigrants that are leaving their countries coming here, James that was sitting here earlier was really upset about it because he feels like he can't have his culture anymore. But it's not our fault running away from war. It's his politicians' fault. It's not his fault either. But he has to live with it. He has to sympathize with us. He has to fix his government before he points his fingers at the victim.
Bro, don't
Secondly,
you think there's a reason they're doing it?
Yes, there's a bigger agenda.
Don't you think you're not realizing the reason and they're falling into their game?
Right, you're next.
Parliament offering.
Cool.
Put it, yeah,
Right, cool. So,
and then you're next.
so let's be clear. It's interesting where we got in the discussion there, because what he was saying at the start, before he got to the end part, I agreed with him, because what he was saying, as far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, he's saying that we shouldn't be putting labels on ourselves and saying it's because of these guys because they're like that, these guys because they look like this, these guys because they're from there. He's saying they shouldn't do that. I agree. But then he says all of that fault is those guys. It's the same thing. Politicians, okay, somebody said that politics is war by other means. You ever heard that before? Yeah, it's true. It's also a front for big business selling weapons, and what's the biggest generator of income? War. Simple facts, right?
Yeah, and your point?
So when you, that is a point if you can see it in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Very good point.
Thank
Right.
you, Mo. It is
So
a
what
point.
I'm saying to you, bro, is that if you, there's going to be good people in positions of power, there's going to be corrupt people in positions of power. But ultimately, somebody also said that people get the government that it deserves. Have you ever heard that piece of wisdom? Yes. Right. So I would say that any change that's going to be done has to be done with the individual. It's the individual's choices right now. It's whether you choose to take responsibility for your actions and the actions of others, and what you can do right now to make the world either better or worse.
I think that's the point. And I just want
an example.
Can you give an example in everyday life?
Absolutely.
That we can do.
Absolutely. So when you're in life and stuff happens to you, well, that can work. Exactly. Yeah. So, something can happen, and you want to put the blame on someone else. But I can tell you my personal experience is when you say, well, what am I doing? Is it my fault? It'll make your life better in a million ways.
To change?
Just that. Think about your own thoughts.
Can I say something?
Analyze your own mind.
Can I say something?
You understand me?
But then the society blames the immigrants. What about that?
Well, I don't.
But he's against that. That's what he's saying. He's saying don't blame.
17.5 million people voted Brexit.
Well done, man. Well done.
Order.
No.
Order.
Pablo. You're in the gallery.
Pablo.
Never indulge into victim mentality, because once you become a victim, you give up the power over your fate to your oppressor.
I'm with you.
I disagree
You
with that.
understand what I said? Yeah, you laugh, you smile, you find it funny, because you don't see what the words mean.
So just
explain.
I will explain it again with people who
He
didn't
wants me
understand.
not to be a Muslim.
No, if you listen to him, he's making a good point.
Listen.
Don't have the victim mentality.
The gentleman will be heard.
What do you want me to be?
The gentleman will be
I
heard.
got next.
Listen.
Order.
The gentleman will be heard.
The strength of people is to stand up and to fight for what they deserve, not to stand on their knees and beg for reparations, for help from the oppressor. If they have oppressed you, why do you expect they will help you now?
And just to
Where is the probability? Not on the knees. All I see is people asking for reparations. Give me reparations. Where is Ukraine asking for reparations?
One of the frustrations with this conversation.
Practicality. Practicality.
If a society lives without
One of the frustrations of this conversation.
without accountability.
Mo, 2 minutes. Mo, 2 minutes. Mo, 2 minutes.
What are you talking about? Accountability.
One of the
As expected, you don't understand what I said.
You have to be accountable what you say.
one of
You
the
have to be accountable what you feel.
I wonder why some people understand what I'm saying and some people don't.
one of the frustrations.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Guys,
Don't do that.
one of the
No,
frustrations.
don't do that.
You have the power.
Because the point is.
I say three. Control the room. Control the room. Control the floor. I've got the floor. Rajiv, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
As a human,
To respond to William and Pavlov. To respond to William. To respond to William and
we're not
Pavlov.
accountable.
To respond.
None of these mean anything.
Rajiv, we need a solution.
To respond.
Alright, guys.
So
Is there a God that will
Things-
punish you if you do something
there are
evil?
things.
I don't know where in particular you're trying to
There
place
are
society.
there are things.
But everyone else is trying to
Rajiv,
be
please. There are things that have happened in society through history which are horrible to people. And what you do in saying, yeah, you can have this chair. Mo.
Intermission, can we just widen the circle, please? Can we widen the circle? Intermission. So a bit wider, bit wider, please.
Could everybody sit one sword's length from each other?
Like we were the red line. So widen the circle a bit, please.
Mo, if you could take two swords lengths from me, that'd be great.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is, history is horrible and is full of injustices. One of the worst injustices I can think of is the transatlantic slave trade or the Arab slave trade. Horrible things happen. What you can't do is deny people the right to talk about their suffering. But as an individual or a community that has suffered, you also have a responsibility to do something yourself. So I'm going to use my people because it's what I know very well. The Jews were persecuted throughout history. We suffered in the Holocaust, we lost 6 million people. Now, not getting into the Israel-Palestine conversation because we'll have big differences of opinion, but essentially we saw this as we are being wronged. And we talk about this all of the time, and it pains us, and we have a victim mentality, so to speak, because we've been persecuted.
And privileges.
But what did we do with that? We liberated ourselves, as we perceive it from our narrative. We overcame our tyrants and oppressors and established a state. And in 71 years, we built up one of the strongest economies, one of the strongest.
Why are you bringing that there?
One of the strongest.
We can bring it
one
back.
of the strongest economies. The reason I'm bringing it up, Mo, because it doesn't matter whether you are from the Afro-American community, whether you are from the Yemeni community, whichever community you are, if you feel that society has wronged you, there is nothing wrong with saying you have wronged me, but it's what you do with
Can I
that.
add some addition to that?
So you fought for power.
Guys, give me 2
You
seconds.
fought for power as a Jewish state.
Order, you're
You
next.
fought for power. Sorry.
Right,
Let's not go to
there, and then you're next. You're next.
The injustices that they're suffering, not just bad.
Let's not go to the Jew state, please. Let's talk about the problems of here, what we're facing. Let's not go to Israel and all that.
What I'm saying, no, you missed my point. If a Jew feels hard done by it, what
He said nothing.
What's your opinion on South Africa?
Give me 2 seconds. I want to add on to what Joseph said.
That's a good question.
My biggest qualm give me 2 seconds. My biggest qualm with one of the, this kind of talk in particular is when someone brings up this whole narrative of the victim, as if it's something that doesn't need to be spoken about. My question is to you, what society do you live in where accountability is not a thing linked to democracy? Without accountability, democracy is non-existent. Liberty is non-existent. None of the values that you hold supposedly and you say are under threat, none of them mean jack squat without accountability. I've literally just given you, right, obligations and rules, void of emotion, void of any kind of like moral recompense or whatever.
I got a question for you.
I've given you a legal basis in which reparations is owed, but you're still here talking about narrative victims. Not narrative victims, victim narratives. What victim narrative is that?
But you're using the term reparations in a discussion.
Wait. If you are emotionally charged by reparations, then take a moment and speak to yourself. Reassess yourself. Have some introspection. Because it's not an emotional subject. I've voided it of emotion. I put it down to literally coins, minimum wage. That is it.
Okay,
that is it.
Okay,
so I don't know why you're bringing emotion into it. So I have to ask you, what is victim narrative about the fact that people should have been paid equally, but aren't going to be paid?
Not yet.
Taken into consideration, just as I finish, taken into consideration that we hear routinely from yourself, not necessarily Will, but people around, that Western society is under threat, this and that, blah, blah, blah. These values are being diminished, etc. What values are you talking about if accountability is not one of them?
Right.
See, my point I was just trying to make at the back, the guy said that when you are powerful and when you have the chance you can rule on others. So he meant that, like, no, humanity doesn't never cherish that go and kill everybody, and if you're powerful, go do. Accountability in a society, wait. In a society, when we live in the Western society still, our power, our government, the Western government, goes to other countries, and they do horrific stuff that they has to be accountable. But when as an immigrant, because I keep bringing myself, because I lived in the East and I've lived in the West. I lived an Eastern life, I've lived in a Western life. I lived in a mentality of an Eastern guy. When I came to the West, I went with the West, with the flow, and I lived. But the moment I saw the good things about the West, I took it. The moment I speak about the negatives of the West, people around me, some of them, especially the white people, especially I'm English, they tell me, oh, you're not welcome. You dress like this. You got a beard. Your name is something like that. No, accountability. I ask him. I am here because our Western government is there. If you want me out of here, the solution for me, as a foreigner in this country, is simple. Tell your leader, go to United Nations and around. From today, Western powers, England has nothing to do with Afghanistan anymore. With a drop of a hat, I'll leave and go to my homeland.
That's it. Exactly.
Because the powers in the West influence our lands. When we come here, we come with our culture, we come with our religion. And when you tell us you have the freedom of religion, when you have the freedom of expression, when you have the freedom of speech, when we exercise and you see we are different, oh, they are different than us.
Especially when they claim this is what they're trying to spread.
Yes, and you
Middle
claim
East.
that you're spreading this around the world. No, you're interfering with my culture, with my religion. As long as you don't like to your culture, your life to be destroyed, your leaders every time, our leaders I should say, because I'm in the West, they stand on our podium, they say, these bloody things, they are against our way of life, our way of freedom and da. What about my way of life? What about my culture? What about my ideology? I, as an immigrant, I'm telling you clear cut, leave my land alone, I'll leave tomorrow. That's my point.
Is that, Mo, can I just do that?
May I speak now?
Okay.
That's how you
You
solve
want to address that?
immigration.
Pick up.
That's a
Leave the
beautifully
Middle
made
East
point.
and Africa alone.
It's very funny how now you say our government instead of their government. Now you are saying our government and not your government.
This is a
Now
straw
you're
man
saying
because Mo has been saying
I've been waiting
Mo has been saying our. Don't put words in people's mouth.
From the beginning I'm saying we.
Wait,
I've never claimed me.
you said our government.
Yeah, but I say me.
Previously you said your government. And it's also funny how you refer to me as if I am a Western.
And I've spoken with them. He said,
see.
as long as you don't be a Muslim, you can live here. He has told me on my face.
Mo, you made an eloquent point.
Yeah, you made your point.
You made a good point.
No, I have a witness. You told me this.
All right.
No, don't overdo it.
It's on camera that I didn't say
No,
that.
don't overcook the egg.
Until distorting the words is something you're very good at. Even your own.
Order.
Yes, you are.
Cook the egg. You got it.
You've been saying
And then everybody keeps quiet. When I speak, everybody talks.
This is the only way he can make a
Excuse me.
Then mediate. I should mediate you for interrupting.
Mr. Bond,
We're going to put you out of the job.
Mr. Bond, you don't like the mediator. Please come in.
You told me
He's going to put you out of the job. These guys are so civilized.
You've been saying our government. You have been saying.
May I speak?
Please.
Don't let him twist what you say because without that, he doesn't have a correlation.
From what we've done as a country to other.
No, wait. It seems to be a common theme here. But when I speak, everybody interrupts.
Let him
So nobody hears anything. And you can keep comfortable to your idea that I hate you and I don't like you and I hate everything about you. That's what you think.
No, I never
That's
said
what you
that.
told me.
I never said
You
that.
see, you interrupt me. You cannot take.
Let's hug each
me.
other.
You cannot take
I
to give me
love
5
Mo.
minutes to express my opinion because it's comfortable to believe that I hate you.
No, I never
It is
said you
very
hate me.
comfortable for you to
I
believe
never
I
mentioned hate.
We're getting lost in the semantics here, guys.
Why should I cut it?
I never mentioned that
To the
he
point.
hates me. No.
Don't. Because people start attacking.
I'm at the point.
Literally the only person making it possible.
He made a very eloquent presentation. Now put your point.
I'm trying to,
As a
but I
deputy
keep being
speaker,
interrupted.
Don't get
deputy
personal.
speaker. Am I right to ask
No, okay,
what's
fair
deputy
enough.
speaker?
What's the formalities for libel and defamation?
So
hold that.
Just in this conversation. Okay, go on. Let him finish, please.
okay, we had a conversation. I had a conversation with you a while ago about being a Muslim.
Yeah.
And I told you that I would advise you to not be a Muslim. Why did I say that? Did I say that
because I was different?
No. You see, you can't hear it. You can't listen.
Okay, please
you
go
cannot
on.
listen.
Okay,
No, go on. Nothing.
Maybe I got
can't
it
speak
wrong.
when he's-
Maybe I got it wrong. Please tell me again.
Okay. I told you that I do not agree with you being a Muslim because I'm against all religions to begin with. But I don't hate religion. Religion is a useful tool in power. That's what you refuse to accept. You accept that religion is about this God, but in reality it's a way of controlling you better.
No, I'm going to correct you.
Something that you
You
don't
said as long
understand.
if you want to live in the Western world, you shouldn't be a Muslim.
No, let him
No, I told you that your way of practicing Islam is not correct.
No,
It's
you
not
said
good.
if you
Listen,
want to
listen.
live in the Western society,
Western
the Western society
the
has
Western
got rules
ideology,
and regulations. You cannot be a Muslim and live here.
How am I supposed to speak?
He answers
How am I
you.
supposed to
Listen,
speak?
listen. He answers
How am I
now.
supposed to speak?
Go on, please.
Okay, thank you again. Western ideology is built on accepting that other opinions might be correct. Freedom of speech, that's what it is. Being uncertain that your truth is the absolute truth. That is the basics of freedom of speech in the West. Your ideology is completely against it because you accept your truths as the absolute realities of this world and all the other truths to be lies, to be said by evil people. You see, you can't take it. You cannot take it. I can take it.
No.
I don't hate you.
Not yet.
I don't hate you. I have nothing to hate you for. Who the hell are you? You're just a guy in speaker's corner. I'm just talking to you. I don't hate Islam.
Okay.
I have Muslim friends, but you know, I have nothing against Islam. I haven't suffered because of Islam.
Yeah.
I haven't suffered anything about the. Yeah, you're laughing, but I'm talking about. Yeah, you see, very funny.
That wasn't the point.
Is it not relevant?
Let him finish. Let him finish.
That wasn't the point.
If you heard something more than what you
That's not
want
what
to
you're saying,
hear,
Lee
you
Man.
would understand what I'm saying.
I-
But the problem is, the victim mentality is so strong,
So my
you
best
will
friend's
never
I'm not a
evolve
victim.
in your
I'm not a
mentality.
victim.
You're very much
I'm
a
not a
victim.
victim. Okay.
You're giving
You're
your
calling him a victim.
oppressors
You're telling
all
me-
the power
Okay.
over you, and
Now,
you're begging
let
them
me
for,
address him, yeah?
for help,
Okay,
for,
okay.
for reparations.
I got you.
You didn't get
I'm not
you
a
didn't listen
victim.
to me.
I'm
You
not
didn't
a
listen to
victim.
him.
I'm a
You didn't
survivor.
listen to him.
I'm a
You didn't
survivor.
listen to
Trust
him.
me.
You're
I've
not a
survived
survivor.
worse things.
You are not a
What-
survivor.
Did you ask for reparations?
What?
You didn't ask for
No.
reparations. I was
Listen,
talking about that.
you
If
said
you want the surviving people,
okay,
look at
you
the
said
Jews
my
and the Ukrainians.
ideology.
They are
My
survivors.
ideology. My
What about the
ideology.
Lebanese?
Now it's talking.
It goes against the Western ideology. Yes.
What exactly
You
goes
said
against?
my ideology as a Muslim goes against the Western ideology. I cannot live like that.
Because you believe your truths are absolute.
Yes, okay, thank you.
It goes against
If
Western
I say my
ideology,
truth
yes.
is absolute,
Yes.
is the Western ideology
Yeah, no,
is
he's saying
absolute?
The
mine
freedom
as
of
well.
speech we have in
Yeah,
the West
yeah.
is based
On
on
what?
accepting other opinions as a possibility.
For my opinion,
Yeah,
I'm
but you
saying
believe
my
in it as
opinion
an
is the truth.
absolute
For himself.
For myself.
Yes, dude.
So,
but you want to
We're not-
implement.
You have given me the freedom to think for myself.
Implement
You
by
said-
conviction, not by
Yes,
compulsion. You understand the difference?
There's
by
a
conviction,
difference. There is a
not by
difference.
compulsion.
But that might be another debate.
The only
If
counter
you
to
let
what you're
me-
saying is
Compulsion
this
and
that-
This
This
is very much
No.
on
As
that
a
one.
free
It's in the
society, when you claim that a person living in a free
into
secular
human
society
psychology.
has the right of practice his religion or her religion and express themselves and speak about what they think, you have given me total freedom what I can think about myself, what I believe in, and how I express myself by putting a burqa or having a beard or whatever. The moment you say, no, I didn't mean that, I meant that a little bit, then that's not absolute freedom. Because I, as a human being, believe in absolute freedom.
There is no absolute freedom.
For me, there is.
But he's not saying freedom, he's saying
Are you
truth. and I think
joking
you're-
right now?
I
Can
want to say
you
something.
jump up
Okay.
and fly?
What?
Can you jump up and fly? Can you kill a person and get away with it?
freedom
It's
like
not absolute
oh my
freedom.
God.
Okay, so what did you mean? What did you mean by absolute freedom?
Absolute
think he was talking about freedom of
if I-
speech and expression.
If you tell me,
I don't know where we've got like.
if you tell me
We'll let
I'm
the lady speak now. We'll let the lady
whatever I
speak.
can believe
From
in,
the
whatever
speaker's
I can
corner, we
express
always bring
myself,
up
what I
we
can
care about.
We'll let the lady
Islam,
speak.
Let me
Islam,
say whatever
I
I
care about
want.
Israel, you care for him.
Mr. Speaker,
We can never.
An example.
Order. Right, we've got a new speaker. Guys, There's a woman trying to speak. It's not good if all the men shout her down.
This lady, the lady will be heard.
What I heard here is people want to feel equal. People want to feel equal to others. It means that and I agree with it, that every person, every human being want to be honored, for who he is, like to be honored for your culture, for my culture, for this culture, to be honored for who you are.
Yes.
And I think we cannot be in equality and honor the other if we don't accept. I mean, you can believe, everyone can believe whatever he believes or she believes. There are different faiths, different religions, different philosophies of people. The thing is, we can live together in equality if we don't hurt somebody else. If we don't hurt somebody else, I can believe whatever I want, I can do my culture, I can do my whatever I want.
Can I comment through
but
the
without hurting somebody else's rights.
No, but in a civil society it doesn't work like
without killing somebody else.
Wait.
It doesn't work like that.
Order.
But I can justify killing.
I've got her point.
I can
I want to
justify
say something. I'm going to say 3 words.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay.
Thank you for that. I'm going to say something to you.
If I'm a normal...
Order, next.
law-abiding person of a society, and I'm sleeping in my home, and if somebody in the middle of the night threatens my family... The gentleman is saying, how can you justify?
I want to speak to
you. You can justify killing.
What you've just explained
yes, you
is
can.
what my family's history in this country was.
Let all the pedophiles run.
No.
Who cares?
Guys.
You're becoming a problem.
No. Stop it. Right. What you just described is exactly what my family experienced in this country. Now I'm telling you, they came as immigrants. I'm a 4th generation from a Russian Jewish family, okay? I'm a secular Jew compared maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to label him, but we may be slightly different in respect of how religious we are, but we are Jewish people, okay?
Me too.
My family came from an Orthodox Russian family to this country, okay? They fled the pogroms of Russia, if you want to look those up, what they are, if you don't know what they are, and they came to this country. They fully integrated into this nation. They became patriots of this nation. They had war records for this nation. They fought as national service and fought for the country as in their armies and air forces. My father and my grandfather, very proud of them. My great-grandmother was a suffragette who fought for people to have the right to vote here. But they were a Jewish family from the East End of London. They've never lost their identity as Jews. We can still be Jews, but we are British. So we have that beautiful balance of living in a nation like Britain with its freedom, but I have the freedom to be Jewish as well.
Just to add something onto that,
that's called integration.
I don't know. No, I haven't said anything for a long time. Actually, no. It's just.
Wait a minute. Is anybody else who hasn't spoken would like to speak?
I just want to
One, you and then you.
Anyway, that's my point, okay? That's how I see it.
I just want to point out the fact
No. This person's speaking.
Me.
No, this
Mr.
person's
Speaker, it's national integration you're talking about. That's what solves it.
It's down to his colour chart.
Understand each other. Yeah.
Louder,
you have to speak up.
I can't hear you, bro.
He was born Muslim.
Yeah.
But when I was young, I was confused.
When he was young, he was confused.
My own scholar, they didn't have anything for me.
The scholars didn't have anything for him.
After 14 years.
After 14 years?
After 14 years, I got a job in the library.
Got a job in the library?
There I found one book.
There he found a book?
Written by William James.
Written by William James.
Translated by Mia Abdul Hakim from Delhi Professor.
Oh,
I can do that. I can do that. He was a professor from Delhi, but I forgot his name. Dr. Abdul Hakim. Abdul Mia Hakim from Delhi.
This was the first time in my life.
First time in his life.
200 pages I read.
He read 200 pages.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Hand on the head.
Don't translate that.
Well, hang on, I'm a non-believer.
You can't translate that like that.
He's talking like me. I read it from the beginning again. I finished 700 pages. William James was not a Muslim.
William James was not a Muslim. Okay.
He holded my hand. He took me to the mosque.
He held your hand and took you to the mosque.
He didn't say that was the best.
He did not say it was the best.
He said it is best for you because you were born Muslim. You know more things about
Oh, he said
Islam.
it was best. William James said it was best for you because you was born Muslim.
And this, my friends, is how you do dawah.
That's the thing.
Anyway.
Sorry?
Yeah, you're not born with a belief.
Yeah. So can I just add?
Let him finish. Let him finish.
But now, right or wrong,
right or wrong,
I'm impressed by London.
There we are.
Ah, right or wrong is impressed by London.
Greatest city in the world, guys. Greatest city in the world, London, England. Beautiful.
In the world,
There is no city.
There is
no city like London.
There's no city like London.
There are 200 nationality here.
200 nationalities here.
And the good people of London nationality.
The good people of London.
They tolerate each other and they live together.
Oh, I can't hear you. Okay, good. Okay, good.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go on, Jake.
Tolerate.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Anyway, I'm proud to be British, but I'm proud of my legacy. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm proud to be
You can
British,
be.
I'm proud to be half Moroccan, I'm proud to be here in London.
Well done.
And I'd like to bring in the climate point to this.
Okay.
Because basically what happens is where there is fossil fuels, where there are resources that are in demand, that's where the wars are, that's where the division happens, that's where the conflict starts. So I think for Afghanistan, wherever we're from, if there are resources there, this is a way to divide people. This is a way to create racism, to create intolerance, to divide people through war. And I think when we realise that fossil fuels are what is causing the problem, I'm not saying, keep it all in the ground, because that's not going to happen realistically. We can't. But let's just think about this. Britain, the USA, are powers that are using fossil fuels to divide countries, to divide religions, to divide people, to divide genders. So this, I think, we must...
Because a common Westerner says, I deserve this.
Well,
you don't think they were divided before fossil fuels? You don't think people were divided before fossil fuels?
I think this is a valid point we should bring up. Fossil fuels are what are causing wars.
Hello.
I agree.
It's causing a lot of racial tension, which is
I
causing
think
a
we're
lot
missing
of...
a common denominator.
In a modern society.
Interest.
In the modern society.
You haven't got the thing.
Different interests. So what?
Very briefly.
Okay, you haven't
New
spoken.
speaker.
No.
I haven't owned a car, right, since 1974, right?
Supply and demand.
And I've ridden a bike all that time, and I haven't eaten meat, right, since 1974 either, right? A little bit of fish.
That's why you look young.
And I'm 74, right?
You look 100.
So,
All
I know is
when he was a young man.
I'm not going to talk about anything else, and everybody here knows that I'm talking forever about everything.
Yeah.
But that's, in answer to you, if everybody had done that since 1974, we may be in a different situation.
Yeah, good point.
Don't eat meat, blah, blah, blah.
If women ruled the world, there'd be no wars. If vegan ruled the world, there'd be no wars. And if we all recycle, there'd be no wars. Outside of those clearly defined principles, what I would like to bring it back slightly to is how, as an immigrant, you should integrate into a society. Because I think that's fundamental. So I can give it from the Jewish experience. I think the Jews are very well integrated into Britain.
Okay.
Let
him finish.
Oh, we are.
Every week in every synagogue on the Sabbath, the Jews say a prayer of gratitude to Her Majesty's government, because
the Muslims are the terrorists.
No, that's not my point, Mo. That's
damn Muslims.
No, listen.
We're talking about integration.
Listen to what I'm saying.
Trust me, I know where he's going now. I know that.
Let him.
So Mo, if you got over your victim mentality,
trust me, I'm not victim.
I'm not talking about you.
Trust me, I'm not a victim.
I'm not talking about you, but you brought it
if I
back
was
to
a
you.
victim,
You brought it back to
somewhere
you.
else.
And And not
So
all
what
the
we are
Muslims
British.
the same.
What I'm trying to say is
love
that
our
as
country.
long as I live in this country,
love our country.
I will not talk about them, they, you in terms of other people that live here. I talk about us. I am part of
I
this,
will.
and if I want to see change, it's on me to vote for that change. If I want Brexit, I'll vote Nigel Farage. If I want to remain, I'll vote goodness knows who, the Liberal Democrats.
let me
If I
answer
want,
him. Let me answer
if I
him.
want to vote for the Racist Party, I'll vote for the
He wants
BNP.
football to
But
go to Arsenal.
I take responsibility and accountability,
Yeah.
and I see
So
myself
you're
not as
starting
an
off.
other,
Yeah.
but as part of the British people.
Yeah.
And so
Good.
if you have citizenship, you should be grateful because we have incredible privileges.
Yeah.
We can have this conversation. None of us are going to be taken to a wall and shot because we dissent from the government. We have incredible liberties and we should be grateful for that.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we can't improve how our government is, foreign policy, all of course we
Rubbish.
can.
But he's
Rubbish.
But he's still Jewish.
Rubbish.
He's still Jewish. And he still can be
What
a Jew.
gives us?
You're next.
He's a British citizen.
It's the reality.
I'm saying. I want to point out what I think you're going to get to. I'm seeing a lot of, no offense, British virtue signaling right now, and I don't really understand
virtue
how.
signaling? It's
Yeah,
history.
no.
What about history?
We've been talking about history this whole time, and you've been getting upset at the fact that certain people are
That is
owed
the
reparations.
history I'm talking about.
I
My
see
family.
a whole lot of
British.
I'm seeing a whole lot of.
You are British.
You're British.
I'll leave tomorrow if they leave my
Mazel
country.
tov.
Order.
Leave my country, I'll leave tomorrow.
I don't believe you. Look at you. Look, you're as Western as I am.
Try it, and then see
Flipping
if you believe
idiot.
it.
Okay, I'm seeing.
How
You
many
don't know
troops are-
nothing about me what I've suffered.
Mo.
Because
Mo.
the Westerner thinks when they're born in the Western society, they deserve everything.
I think you have to take place with me. We deserve the same.
Hang on, I'm going to apologise
British,
to
I'm
Rajiv.
British.
I'm
We
going
have
to
the same
apologise. Hang on.
No, what?
I'm going to apologise.
You're not British?
I'm going to apologise to Rajiv because Rajiv,
In London.
I interrupted
People on
Rajiv.
YouTube are going to go there.
Tell me,
Well,
go
that's
home,
it.
go home.
Order.
You know that.
That's not nice.
There are people. 17.5 million people voted to telling me go home.
That's the, now you're saying Brexit.
Calm down.
What should I think?
I see that we have the ball. We have the ball for that.
I'm trying to answer this question.
You don't talk. For God's sake, no. For God's sake, if he exists. For God's sake.
Reminds me of second
For Allah's sake, man, don't bring this.
What I think you're kind of pointing at is that I'm seeing right now, like we just had someone say, "I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to be British."
I
didn't say that.
Completely, not you, lady over here. So high horse, man. But, yeah, again, no. My
Guys,
don't know how you can see that in peripheral. Go ahead. But I don't really see how that was relevant to this whole topic of this conversation because no one has ever said that it was a bad thing to be British.
It came from the point she made about integration.
Say that again?
It came from the lady's point about how you can live yourself.
Talk.
I
Let him talk. Let him
Rajiv,
finish.
I'm answering your question. You made
Wait, he didn't finish yet.
But he made a question.
Afterwards.
It just seems that whenever we have these historical or just general political debates or conversations, there always needs to be this acknowledgement or this absolute kind of like being on all fours. Being on all fours at the privilege that we are supposedly given in this society. The irony about this is that our government is extraditing Julian Assange as we speak, and we're talking about freedom of speech. We're talking about freedom of this.
He raped someone. That's why he's been extradited.
Wait.
That's for the courts.
Wait.
There we go. Your reality will come out. Don't worry.
He exposed what America did in Iraq. He exposed what America did.
Assange is being attacked because
Julian Assange is a hero.
Your reality will come out soon. Don't worry.
He should leave the book.
We're not talking about Julian Assange, Derek. Derek, we're not talking about Julian Assange.
You said that he's supposedly being, the rape was why he's being extradited.
That's why he's being extradited.
Come on. To America or Sweden?
He's not being extradited to Sweden. He's being
That's the
extradited to the
conversation.
States.
Are they going to be sued?
No. They're extraditing
Britain
to
should
the
be
States.
disgraced
Sweden's
about
not
that.
looking for the extradition.
They dropped it now. They were going to be
He knows what he did.
If they dropped it, they were going to reintroduce it.
Make a point because there's two other people after you.
Dude,
I'm patient.
my last point. Your mediating hasn't been
Rajiv, you were
unlined.
making a point to me.
I'll make my point
to ask
and
in
then
a
I'll go.
minute.
Rajiv, you were making a
The
point
quick
to me.
question. Okay, no worries.
Finish.
Even again, right? If a rapist told you tomorrow, right, that the government is planning to bomb your family, are you going to take the fact that he's a rapist first, or the imminent threat on your family?
Don't answer the question. No, not yet.
Don't answer it. Don't answer
Don't
it.
answer
Don't answer it. I'm talking about Julian Assange in this instance. I don't agree with the fact that he's being up for these charges, but I'm concentrating on the political actions that he has supposedly done with the wiki.
Assange is a tangent. I'm just saying Assange is a tangent.
Yeah, I
Let's not
understand.
debate
I understand. I understand.
He won't get
What I'm
free-
trying to say is,
He won't get a fair trial in
at
America. We
no
all know
point
that.
has anyone in this conversation.
What are you gonna answer?
Mo, 1 second. No point has any of these people in this conversation said that this is a shit society to live in.
Who
no
said
one would
that?
ever say that.
Who said that?
No
Who
one has
said
said
that
that.
this is a
The
shit
only
society?
question.
Keep attacking
Wait.
this society.
I'm
we're attacking the evil.
Can I quickly? Let me finish.
It has so many evils. It's a
Today
shit
we've
society.
heard the victim narrative, emotions, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems like every time people actually have valid criticisms, valid problems to bring up in Western society of how we can improve it. Right? Not saying how we can bring it back and how we can batter people into feeling guilty, how we can improve it. You see this as a personal attack. I don't understand what kind of political world you're living in.
I didn't hear a single time you offered something to make society better. Only victimhood, only I feel bad for it, only I've been downtrodden in the past,
I
only
offered an
that.
explanation of reparations.
Okay,
You didn't listen to that.
Yeah, I did listen to it. Reparations itself is the pinnacle of that stupid ideology.
So you still haven't given me a reason as to why the actual thing is wrong.
He asked me a question.
It will never happen.
Of course it will never happen.
You need to live. I am in power. I'm a nobody. I'm a migrant.
Like you.
New speaker,
Ukrainian. Your mentality.
You don't want to listen.
Open your ears.
You don't want to
Open
listen.
your ears.
You don't want to listen.
Order.
All right, first of all, for the first time in my life, I see a civilized conversation.
Thank you. Well done.
Highly acceptable. Clap for yourself for that, honestly. That's amazing.
I say
I still love you, Mo. I still love you.
Mo, can I get
I
one?
still love you, Mo.
No!
Dirty Jew!
You said it.
Wait, vague.
Oh, you bloody Spurs fan, what are you?
Of possible integration here in
I'm not a Western fan.
is massive. Not a place in the world has something like Speaker's Corner.
thank you.
That's for sure.
No, that's a good point.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
The possibilities of integration in a society such as this is massive. Not a place in the world has a place like Speaker's
Agreed.
Corner.
I agree.
Right?
Agreed.
We have some white extremists here and there.
We had in the past.
Extremists of all kinds.
I just
And
wanted
some
to
left-wing extremists.
Let's make that clear.
No adding. No
When we
adding.
talk about
This man's next. This man's next.
That's fine.
I want to
Please let the man speak as well,
That's
please.
fine, but again, where was the
after
mediation on my behalf?
And
Where was the
mediation.
Mediations on your
Doesn't
behalf.
really matter.
You see, you don't notice
So I
when
just
he's now.
wanted to respond
You
to
only
one
notice
thing
when
that Pablo
he's
said.
he's against
Let's speak.
Excuse me.
Hello!
Sorry.
You didn't realize even one time when he mediated.
Excuse me, would the Honourable Member for Sevastopol please wait there? The Honourable Member for Sevastopol, please wait while this
that a
gentleman
joke?
for some of these...
Pavlov said something
Kiev.
about reparation and about how part of democratic values is that you don't proclaim that you have objective knowledge, right?
Yes.
My claim is that in truth, democratic values just put forward the idea of accepting that someone else will have different views. And within that, implicitly, it's free, it's okay for someone to believe that his views are objective.
Yes.
You get
But
what
that's
I mean?
against the democracy.
No,
it's not. Yes, it is. It's the absolute opposite.
I have the freedom.
Not yet.
Listen, it destroys the democratic point of view. It can't coexist together. It can't coexist.
If it was against democratic values, we
1
would have
plus
no
1.
choice.
I'm disappointed. 1 plus 1. 2.
If that was a democratic value, we never have something called political parties, because political parties put forward ideologies and they say we are right, they are wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not based on faith.
See how we break
Right.
down.
Okay. Part of my faith, practicing my faith is to believe that my faith is correct, right?
All of it.
Democracy allows
Just
me to
don't
have
hurt
that.
others.
Exactly, don't hurt other
Democracy
people.
allows
That's what
me
I'm
to
trying
have
to say.
that.
Don't affect
It
their
is something
lives.
within
Just
my
live with
mind.
them.
So as long as I don't put it
Live with
forward
them.
and I
Be
utilize
kind
it
to
in
them.
order to enact violence, it's fine. Second of all, with the issue of reparations, I think that if you are to be slapped, I feel like it. But if you are to be slapped, you should get some sort of compensation for that. It's only justice.
Good point.
If Britain went to Afghanistan and bombed 2 schools, they should give money to build 2 other schools.
Good point, good point. I will answer right now to that point, and I really love that you gave that example.
You're next.
Yes,
You're
yes,
not
yes,
next. No,
yes.
you're not. This
No,
man
he
is
asked me
next.
something.
I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere.
Thank you very much for speaking, sir. Thank you very much.
Is Mr. Speaker?
You
want to speak after?
You good?
Okay. You want to speak?
Yeah, me too, man. I made my point.
Come on, guys, come. Sit down. Sit down.
I got something I wanted to ask.
This man,
What goes
then you, and then you.
Try take it deeper.
See you, Reziv. Thank you.
Okay. So I heard the word integration so many times. Thank you. I want to hear an
Take a
answer,
seat. Or?
especially from Western raised people. Can integration be enforced and dictated? I tell you the truth, what I feel about invading my country, Iran. I think the hidden goal behind all the destruction, inflicted on the people and the country and the fallout, the hidden goal was indoctrinating those savage people. Can integration be dictated?
No. Integration.
Come on.
And then this man next. There's new people.
Yeah, but I was.
These all questions are rhetorical.
If I were Rajiv, I would get really upset because of it. But I'm not going to get upset.
Look, everybody, we're paying him £400 an hour to do this, so please let him get on with it.
This one or the one who left?
Him.
Him.
He was talking about integration. I mean, I'm thinking from the African perspective.
Yeah, me. I was talking about integration. That's right.
Integration to us is nothing but an illusion of inclusion. It's an illusion of inclusion according to the Africans, because we don't get what we're supposed to be getting. So, we are generalizing and we see as an illusion of inclusion. That's all I want to say.
All right, good. Thank you.
I mean, that's your point of view.
I got a point to say. I see.
Okay.
Can I go next?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just put this on.
Come on, I see 3.
No, you go.
What is this? I've been waiting for a while. I'll be Rajiv this time. I'll actually get upset.
You haven't said a word for at least 40 seconds.
Right.
So perhaps at least 40 seconds since you last said
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
I'm just on my watch.
I want to get a shot.
You're joking.
40 seconds since
New
you last said
speaker.
something.
New speaker.
Yeah, but I still love you. Understand that? Right.
I think the thing is, so
Well, it keeps me warm, mate.
there's definitely like a need for acknowledging stuff, like bad stuff that happened in history, and there's also a need to pay reparations to people that owe it. Right? So I'm German. We're paying reparations to Jews that actually that actually lived through the Holocaust, and that's really, really important. And we also acknowledge all the stuff that we did, and I think that's all important. But we can't, going to the reparations, we can't pay a community who didn't directly suffer at the. So if we're talking about America and the slaves, it's so far behind that we can't we don't have one pure slave race in the society anymore, so we can't really pay it back.
Which one do you choose?
So we have to.
Pick your slave.
The real importance is that we make sure that it never happens again.
So how come you pay to that? No, you don't pay reparations to the Africans.
Let him finish.
The Africans, because the millions that the Germans, when
Just
they
don't do it
experiments
again.
on them.
Just don't do
Why
it
don't
again.
you
It's a
pay
reparation.
If you're in
Why not?
Germany,
Learn
if
by
you're
the
in
mistake.
Germany-
Don't do it again.
If you're in Germany and you were in a concentration camp, and you go to the court and say that, then you will get reparations. No matter if you're a Jew, no matter if you're black, no matter if you're a communist, and that's a big importance. So don't let it's not about race here. It's about people who suffer from something, and they need reparations, and they also need.
The people from Namibia suffer from the Germans.
You
but
said
the Germans are not paying reparations to the people of Namibia today. That's the point I'm making.
We're not paying reparations to the
Yeah, but he's saying it's an individual issue, not just a race issue.
It's not race. I'm not talking about.
I mean, I can't go to Germany and get reparations for the Second World War. I wasn't born, was I?
We make sure that it never happens
So, I
again.
get it.
And we give the people that suffered from it what they deserve.
But someone in our family was.
And that's all I'm saying.
You're still paying reparations now.
Wait, you're longer than anybody else.
Very good point. Thank you. Well done.
Oh, come on, I see 3. Now you're just messing with me.
No, you're after him.
Now you're just messing with me.
Hang on.
Am I after him?
Yes.
I see 3.
So don't disturb.
It's been at least a minute and a half since Pavlov has spoken.
So maybe we can get back to something with a bit more substance, if you want my opinion. So because originally we were talking about reparations and I thought thought we were getting somewhere. We got sidetracked for I don't know how long that was.
Because we didn't come up with
now
what
we're back with this
reparations
guy. All right, cool. So I got a couple of things I'd like to say. One of them is a really tricky thing to define. Is when people were talking about British values or anyone's values or whatever, and talking about I'm proud that I'm from here. I'm proud that I'm Jewish. I'm proud that I'm from this lineage. I want to ask you why. What does it mean when you feel pride?
It's a feeling.
No, I'm going to keep going, bro.
Oh, yeah, I think
right?
that's a
So
question.
I'm going to keep going, bro.
Right.
This is a type of speaking,
Yeah.
right?
I agree with you. I do understand that. I'm English.
Wait, guys, come on.
Yeah, carry on.
It's not one-upmanship. I'm trying to discuss ideas. So,
but it is one.
aye. When you're proud of something, it should be because you achieved it, right?
Yes.
I would say so. Something that you personally went through struggles, hardships, sweat and tears to achieve. Then you can feel proud of yourself. Let's say you're addicted to smoking, you want to give up smoking, you go through the withdrawal symptoms, it's tough. You feel inner, you're like, that was good. I feel proud of myself. Why do people say I'm from Scotland? I'm not proud to be Scottish. Why should I be proud to be Scottish? Why?
Because of the achievements of your ancestors.
Now my answer to that is
still a rhetorical question.
Should you be proud of what you do, or should you be proud of what somebody else did? That's the question. Answer it honestly to yourself. You'll say you should be proud of what you did, not someone else. Does that mean you can't celebrate and understand the great things people did in the past? Sure you can, but you shouldn't personally identify with them because it wasn't you.
Yes.
But you should look at the good things
right?
about
No.
Have you finished?
It gives identities, that's fine.
You make your own identity, bro.
Right.
You make your own.
Have you finished?
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
well,
you.
no, I can talk for a while. But
My answer. I
make your
really
own.
love the example you gave about the slap, because in Ukraine we have a saying. It goes like this: after a fight, don't be shaking fists. It means after it's over and time has gone on and on and on and on and on, don't start asking for help. Don't start asking for reparations when it has been centuries after what happened. Why not? Why not? Are you didn't understand the joke, did you?
Do you have to pay?
Stop being a victim.
Do you have to pay?
Wait till your turn.
Okay, I will give you guys, and I'm gonna listen.
His ancestors will have done bad shit.
It seems to me like nobody likes what I'm saying ever. Every time I speak, I get interrupted. Now, let me give you an example, and I'm gonna leave this conversation after this example.
No.
Yes. No. I'm tired of being interrupted, man. I'm tired. No. Nobody wants to hear. Nobody wants to hear. No, look, I don't want to be annoying. Honestly, I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to annoy you. Wait, let me
playing the victim.
Wait.
You haven't been ignored. All you've heard all
No,
afternoon
listen,
is
there's a
it's on the
difference between
camera.
playing the victim and understanding when your opinion is not being appreciated. When I'm not being appreciated, that's it. It's fine. Yeah, but it's fine. I don't want to annoy people for now.
But you have had a very good talk. You've had a very good run of talking.
Okay, whatever,
it's fine.
whatever. I'll just give my example and then I'll leave. I made a promise. No, I made a promise. I made a promise. I'm a man of my word.
Don't play the victim.
All right. During the Soviet Union, there were two man-made starvations in Ukraine. They're called the Holodomor. 10 million people died during both of those starvation altogether. Altogether, 10 million people died. The number, of course, is, discussed sometimes. The Russians deny it completely.
Yeah.
And sorry?
Does it matter?
Before World War II, during Stalin's rule.
Maybe 1930.
I don't know the exact year right now. Maybe it's my bad, but you can look it up very easily.
It's in the 40s.
Very well. It doesn't. The year doesn't matter. What does matter? It was a very short while ago, or just before World War II.
Okay,
now,
man-made, you say.
sorry.
Explain.
So you trivializing the truth by saying that what happened in the past, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Come on, it does matter.
Okay. Yeah, it does matter. Yes, it does matter. It does matter. And let me show you my point of view. I told you guys. So don't interrupt me now. I will give you this example, then I leave. So please, don't interrupt me now. Why are you laughing?
Okay.
I'm laughing because you keep asking me not to interrupt.
Whatever.
Just get on with it.
Keep laughing. Keep laughing. Keep interrupting. Keep laughing.
Just get on with it.
Dude, shut up. Okay, so 10 million people died during man-made starvations. The only reason Western Ukraine and Central Ukraine has not been exterminated the same way was because of a man who the left hates nowadays. His name is Stepan Bandera. He was a man who was leading the UPA, which was the Ukrainian rebellious army. He fought against the Soviets in a very gruesome, unforgiving way. When the when the KGB agents would surround villages and some towns and confiscate all the food and, get all the food in one place, his soldiers would surround the place, they would kill the KGB agents, kill their families, kill their children, kill everybody, give the food back to the people and burn the place. It was a terrible thing to do. He was a true devil, but it's only because of him that Western Ukraine and Central Ukraine was not completely exterminated. And, as most leftists say, he did cooperate with Nazi Germany when the World War II began. Because World War II was right after Stalin tried to exterminate the Ukrainians. So he just took whatever opportunity he could of fighting against the Soviet Union. Afterwards, the Germans imprisoned him because they discovered that he wanted to create, an independent Ukraine. And they imprisoned him. He was in prison until the end of the war. Afterwards, he came back. Then he fled back to Germany. He was killed by a KGB agent. Nowadays, Russia is denying the Holodomor in Ukraine. And the Soviet documents about it are all in, most of them are in Russian possession, and some of them have been destroyed. So nowadays we don't have a whole lot of solid proof that it happened, even though we have many different proofs of it. My point is, I never heard once a Ukrainian asking a Russian for reparations. I never heard once Ukrainians asking for the Russian, don't interrupt. Russians asking the Ukrainian government for help, for reparations, for salvation. Because, first of all, exactly, they will never do it. It's useless to even try it. You need to become strong by yourself, just like the Ukrainians need to become strong by themselves. Ukraine is at war right now. They're dying, fighting against Russia. Nobody cares. The West doesn't care. Nobody took Ukrainian refugees. Only Poland. Poland took a considerable amount, but no Western countries. It didn't even appear in the news too much. The news were riddled, full of these Syrian refugees, these refugees, that refugees. No Ukrainian refugees. Do you see Ukrainians complaining? Do you see Ukrainians crying about it? Do you see Ukrainians playing the victim? That is why I'm saying Ukrainians have a bigger possibility of becoming strong than you do, because they're not playing the victim all the time, because they're not allowing their oppressor to dictate their fate. And that is the last example I'm going to give you. Be strong or you will die. That's how this world works to the end. And there is no morality to justify it. Just become stronger if you're being downtrodden. That's it.
And that's actually what happened to the Jews. That's what the Jews did as well. That's exactly the same thing.
A promise is a promise.
That's exactly what happened.
Come on, say it.
Don't be the victim anymore. Be strong.
You're not in the park.
I'll be in the park.
Strength comes out in different ways.
We can talk.
And Estonia as well, I mean.
Guys, take a seat. Anyone want to sit down? Join the conversation.
According to my belief, what Pavlov believes is tantamount to saying that if you have been through injustice, you do not need, actually doesn't help for you to ask for reparation for that injustice, because it makes you have a victim mentality, it makes you weaker. Right. In my own humble opinion, that when one state invades another state, destroys all of its infrastructure, and it's already a weak state, for it to get reparation for all of the infrastructure that was destroyed, it's right. Because without that money, they will not be able to build themselves up again. What Pavlov said was all idealistic and nice. However, he based it upon the Ukrainian situation, and as we can see today, the Ukrainian situation is not getting any better.
There's no other way.
It's not getting any better. It's clearly not getting any better. He's saying that the Ukrainians are not asking reparation from the Russians. That's because they don't have the structure that allows them to get to a position to ask reparation
That's
from
not
the
his
Russians.
point at all. It's not his point at all.
What?
The Russians hate them. Why would they ask somebody who hates you, oh, please give me money?
All
That's
right.
what he said.
Because
somebody
the
who hates you.
situation that they are in does not help for that. Because they cannot even begin to ask Russia, because if they even get into Russian bounds, they are going to get
The Estonians
repressed.
have the same thing. I've been to
You get what I
Estonia
mean?
many times. When you go to Tallinn, somebody actually laughed and joked at me. He said, if you ever go into a pub in Tallinn, never mention a Russian. Because they have such a hatred towards the Russians in Estonia, what happened. But they're not calling for reparations and all that. The history's gone. You know what they got? They got their own freedom. That's what happened. That's what they did. This lady doesn't want to speak anymore, apparently.
You want to speak? Yes or no?
You can speak.
Hello? You want to speak?
I just wanted to say something to this black guy from West Africa.
Well, you go over there and speak to him.
Well,
He's over there.
maybe hit me.
Hey, brother.
We're sitting down.
You can speak to us if you want about it. What are you going to say?
question
for you.
Let me just say something. Let me just say something. One thing real quick. Right, when you ask for reparations, you get justice.
She's scared that you're going to hit her. She's scared you're going to hit her.
No.
That's what you just said.
I'm not.
Careful with your jokes. Careful with your jokes.
I'm not scared of anybody.
Yes, okay.
No, I'm from Germany.
When you
Hold
get
it. He hasn't finished yet.
when you get listen, 2 points. When you get reparation, you are asking for justice. When someone knows or a state knows that if they enter another state and they will get punished for it because they will have to pay for all of the destruction that they have
It's
wreaked.
a generalisation, that's
Then-
brilliant, but what exactly is the reparation?
Let's
What
just
exactly is
take
that?
it. There are different forms of reparation, but let's just take into consideration financial reparation, right? So if they have the idea, or if they know that they will have to pay for all of the destruction that they wrought on a state, this will de-incentivize them. This will de-incentivize them from going in and committing the injustice in the first place. Reparation enforces morality.
It's a good point.
No.
It's this lady now.
No, I don't have to take this away. I just wanted to say I worked in Africa for a couple of years. I was in West Africa as well. I assume you come from West Africa because you're wearing the trade piece. Is that right? Yeah.
I'll be right back. Yes, I am.
Yeah. You're Nigerian or
No.
Ghanaian?
It's good. No, I wouldn't tell you exactly, just for the purpose of the conversation. But yes, I'm an African. Yes.
Look, if it's personal stuff, yes.
It's not
take it to
really
the side.
personal.
Is it for all of us?
It's for all of you.
Right, okay, make the point.
I mean, since I worked in Africa, I know that African people still have slaves nowadays. And he was very upset about slavery, and of course I am as well, because I think slavery is the worst you can do to a person, because you take all the rights from the person, and make him to work for you for no benefits for those persons.
Yes.
But I have seen Mali people who work who still have slaves sleeping at their doorsteps and they are not paid anything. So if you say, or if you address the Western world of having slavery and things like that, then you have to start it in your own country first as well, because it's bad slavery. I hate slavery. I hate suppressing
Did you say
anybody.
country? Remember the keyword country.
But it's not no right to have a cultural thing. Like I have slaves, That's not for me. It's taking the rights of people. Anybody. And I don't like slavery at all, of course. I'm an educated person. I worked in Africa. If you say you want benefits from white people, I work for no money in Africa.
One with the big uniform.
I didn't get any money.
Have you made your point now?
No.
My point is finished. I just want to say nobody can talk about something and they still have it.
That's your point. Would you like to address
point? Issue first.
Yes or no?
You've got to look after your own issues sometimes. You've got to look after your own issues first.
You
should always.
I
get it.
You say that
Good
you
point.
live in West Africa and in one of the countries you saw slavery. Is that what you say? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that what you say, right?
I lived in Ghana. I lived in Kenya.
I'm from a Western African country that don't have slavery.
She's saying that they do have it within those
They
countries.
have it. You know why? Because
you're
the
addressing the white people
Arabs still enslaving Africans today, and the Arabs, mind you, were the first to enslave Africans,
But the Africans
prior
are
to
enslaving
any
Africans, is
Europeans.
what he's trying to
And when the
explain as well.
Europeans saw the Arabs
As well.
enslaving Africans, then they thought that slavery it's a thing to do. So we have. You're talking about Arab people.
Sorry.
You're talking about black Arab people. Okay? All that part of the world.
No, but she's saying she's been there and she said she lived there.
Yes.
And she's seen Africans enslaving Africans.
Libyans enslaving people from Mauritania and stuff like that. Yeah, it does happen.
Because
I agree to what she said. But we're talking about in
Just
general.
there's white people enslaving white people here as well.
I'm talking
sometimes.
about. In terms of the Western society, why do they pay millions of money to the Jews
We've
in
already answered
reparations.
that. We told you exactly why they've gone back to some of the Jews.
That's the problem.
Not all the Jews, just some of the Jews who are in that issue.
When you make a distinction,
I'm Jewish, I don't have any
when you give this child
money from
something,
Germany.
you don't give that. You want to speak well? It's going to be a problem.
My
There's
parents
no balance
were
there.
refugees.
You're next. You're finished now. Have you finished? All right. You speaker.
Second one.
Pay what you owe. Restitute what you owe. That's it.
Reparations.
Reparations. Pay back.
It's paid back.
It's not a microphone.
Why you
Yeah, it's not a microphone. It's that one.
It's not going to work.
It's going
Simply,
to work.
it's not going to work.
That's what you believe.
Wait, we can't hear him.
That's what you believe. We believe that's going to happen. That all means necessary.
Hey, order!
I don't think it's going to work.
Where's the judge thing?
Largely because you make reparations. Who do you make them for? We were talking about reparations for what went on in Amritsar. It happened a very long time ago. Am I going to feel guilty for it? No, I'm not.
Well, you still had it. What did you say? What did you say?
Reparations in the
From Amritsar.
You still pay the Jews today, right? So why don't you pay all the people that you owe? That's what they're asking you.
We've answered your question about the Jews.
No, you didn't.
They did know.
You didn't know.
Not
I did.
all the Jews haven't been repaid, just the people that were directly affected by the Nazis. I didn't get anything from the Germans.
You paying to the Jews.
You don't seem to
Pay
get
to
it.
the Africans. Pay what you owe.
I didn't get anything from the Germans, and I'm a secular Jew. I don't get from the Germans. I wasn't born
The
then.
Africans are telling you, you stop something. Pay back.
Let him finish.
Pay back. That's all they're asking you.
Well,
we don't even
Stop interrupting. Generalising
Let
about
him
Jews.
speak.
We're talking about some Jews. Some Jews who are affected, yes.
Right, all I'm saying is,
Not all of them.
if we make reparations
Well, they're expensive.
for all Jews, if we make reparations for what Britain did in colonial times, if we make reparations for any injury done for people in the last 20 years, there's no point. A, who's going to work it out? Who's the money going to? Governments. Who will actually pay out the money to those who suffered? Governments. Governments are corrupt.
If you come to the WhatsApp,
Hey, order!
It will end up all the time. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to
He's talking in general.
I'm talking in general.
He's addressing me, right?
I'm not addressing you.
He's not
I'm
addressing
talking about everyone here. Reparations end up by being corrupt. They end up by going to the wrong people. They're blaming me for what my ancestors did, and there's no point in basically setting up people always remembering
Are you saying
agreements.
that your
to end
ancestors
up-
are not guilty of what they did?
Order!
What are yours guilty of?
I'm not addressing
They
you.
inherited the things that they stole. They inherited.
What I'm saying
And we're
is,
not asking you
it
for your apology.
If you tell the story on far to go away, I'll go on. Otherwise, I'm not going to bother. It does not matter who pays reparations. It'll go to governments. We'll go back on grievances. There'll be disagreements on those who pay. There'll be disagreements on those who recover the money. It'll be a complete waste of time. There'll be anger anyway.
What makes you so certain of that?
It's a pipe dream.
How could it be
It's a pipe dream. It will never, ever please anybody.
It's a pipe dream because there isn't a practical
Wait,
solution
you want
how
to
you're going
speak?
to do
You
it.
have to wait.
I get really angry with anybody who spent their lives disagreeing.
No, I'm not saying that you lie, but you don't.
Can I say something?
But you've got an issue. You made a statement. The reason I had to interject
It was
was
not
no.
encourage
No, it's a very important point, Derek. You made a point about Jews.
And
And I'm telling you, all the Jews in the world did not get money from Germany. Just the people who were directly affected by the Nazis.
We know our
This man is next.
Use them as weapons, not for the ears.
I'm still waiting for the check. If anyone would like to send it,
You're probably going to have to force yourself in.
Hey, this man is next.
I was born in Welbeck Street, London. I wasn't affected by the
Hey, brother, we got a new speaker.
Okay, go. Right,
Not every Jew, just exactly. That's fine. Thank you.
I'm from the Middle East, right? And like originally from the Middle East, but I earlier heard a question. Someone say there is no pure race, and someone said no, there is. There must be. I think mankind is one race at the end of the day, and that's one of the points you're trying to make today. Of
course. Yeah, absolutely.
We are one race. Like, all right, whatever the sun. Like, I'm a Muslim, but I still believe in evolution and stuff. Islam doesn't go against evolution. Now maybe like our colors change and all this stuff, whatever. Now, obviously in history, our ancestors, all of them have probably been guilty of something. Like, obviously, not even probably, for sure. Of
course.
And I think, if I've understood correctly, in Germany, the actual Jews that were in the concentration camps are being paid. And the quote on and the claim on this side is that the Africans that exist today were not the slaves. However, in my personal opinion, I think because of the slave trade, Africa has been set back several hundred years back. Like, they were not allowed to modernize themselves while the rest of the world was allowed. So to some extent, I think I mean, in an ideal world, okay, morality suggests that there should be some extensive aid being given to Africa so that they can bring themselves back up into like the new modern world, right? And I think it's happening slowly. I think more should be done. But at the same time, I also agree with Pavlov, because he was not saying that you do not deserve, or like he wasn't even looking into your point that you do not deserve, or Arabs don't deserve, or white people don't deserve compensation. All right. What he's saying is that we live in a world today that is not an ideal world. It's not what you want, it's what you fight for and what you take.
Right.
And he's right, because as an Arab, all right, I know as an Arab till this day, okay, and I've studied really, when I say as an Arab, I mean the heritage and whatnot, but I still class as mankind. Humanity to me is the most important thing. Now, as someone who comes from like a Middle Eastern background and stuff, Lebanon is an amazing example. I've heard examples about Jewish people in Israel. I've heard about all these other races. I think Lebanon is a great example because it's very recent. In 1982, they kicked Israel out of Lebanon, part of their land, which was an invading force. They cried out to the international community since then till this day, and there has been nothing done by the international community to support the Lebanese right to self-determination and the Lebanese rights to their land. The international community stayed quiet, and it never stopped Israel from doing anything. The international community cannot say anything to America. So Lebanon learned the hard way that they have to fight to get their rights. And they have, and they've been very successful. In 2007 it also happened, in 2006. And before Israel was the aggressor, now Israel used to roam the roads of Lebanon, especially South Lebanon. Now, Israel only flies planes around the skies of Lebanon, which is against international law, but they do it and no one says no to them. Actually, the stronger countries in the world support them for it. Now, Israel, because it lost those wars, it has now started to build a wall around itself to protect itself from Lebanon, okay? But realistically, the point here is that they fought to a point where their lands were invaded. They had thousands of prisoners in Israeli prisons, okay, brought away, and they fought. They never cried out to the international community. I'm not going to say fought. Fought is the wrong word. They organized. They organized themselves and collaborated and worked together to create an administration and a force in their country that got them their rights. So the people mobilized.
Okay. We got your point, so we have to fight for your rights.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about anything.
You want to speak?
We haven't mentioned the Christian Druze militia.
Order. Right.
But we got some of it. We haven't mentioned the Christian Druze militia or anything. Hezbollah or the Christian Druze militia.
Those guys.
It's very hard being a speaker.
His father fought those wars.
Go Mom!
Just on that one point, see what happened actually was that the Israeli doctors volunteering on the border of Lebanon have been taking in all of the Lebanese into the Israeli hospitals for the last 10 years, and my tax money has been actually paying for all these wonderful innocent people to have free medical procedures done in our hospitals with all the women and children and men.
Why did they need medical procedures? Was it because they were shot?
No,
No.
because of the Muslims.
Because of the war that's going on in Lebanon by the Muslims.
Yeah, they were killing each other.
Sure, but Israel invaded Lebanon, right?
The Muslims.
Israel invaded Lebanon, right?
Yeah, the Muslims.
All right, we can't agree on that then. There's no discussion.
Israel's an angel.
Very evident.
Yeah, but Lebanon isn't quite how you discuss it.
So,
and I've lived on that border he's talking about. I lived on that border, I know what he's talking about. I've lived on the border he's talking about. I've actually lived there. So I know.
By their own
Kiryat Shimona. I lived in Kiryat Shimona.
Okay.
Kill your own people.
Okay.
And you know what?
Kill their own people.
Fine.
I lived on the site of the Golan Heights, so I know why we need the Golan.
Order.
Yeah. Well, what she's mentioned is, in some sense, true. Like, Israeli doctors do treat Arabs, but at the same time, Nazi doctors treated Jews in concentration camps. Nazis gave Jews free food in concentration camps. So what she's doing is proving that Israel is a Nazi state. Okay. Secondly, so Israel, they shoot Palestinians, take the organs, and they give other Palestinians medical care. Just like Nazis gave Jews in concentration camps free food and free medical attention.
I want to reply to that.
No, he's next.
Okay, all right. And you know your point. I'm a equal opportunities. Just like I attacked Israel, I'll attack Lebanon.
I've actually lived on that border. I know what you're talking about. I lived in Kiryat Shimona.
All Arab countries, because you know these Arab countries.
I'm a British man.
Okay. All of these Arab countries. How old are they? So Mr. Sykes, Mr. Picot took a map, wrote a bunch of lines on the map and said, you're Lebanese, you're Syrian, you're Iraqi. These countries never existed before World War I. Okay? These countries never existed. So any Arab with any patriotism is a fool and a tool of the colonialists.
I'm against patriotism. I'm against believing that
Thank you. Right. Thank you for that. You speak up. You speak up.
Thank you. Thank you for your
that
point.
applies to Israel as well.
The reason for so many casualties from Syria is
I've actually lived in the region he's talking about, so I understand.
You speak up.
Syria have been in a civil war for the last 7 years with millions of casualties, and Israel takes care of some of them. They're not fighting right now against Lebanon. Lebanon and Syria is in a civil war for last few years. Village casualties, and Israel is giving them money for the poor people, and they are taking care of them with medical help. And there was a war between Israel and Lebanon, but it doesn't mean that this war was years ago. And right now, Israel is more helping to those countries, and some Israel even believe in peace between those countries. But like, Israel more helps these countries than hurt them.
Yeah.
Especially now when we are actually very helpful with them. We are very busy in intel wars and fights between governments and the Hamas and all of those kinds of things.
Hezbollah.
Okay, thank you.
You haven't mentioned Hezbollah, have you? Why is Hezbollah on that border and not the Christian Druze?
You want to speak next?
The Christian Druze were alive to receive.
After him?
Yeah, the Christian Druze.
I think you speak, and after he's next.
I think for the woman that's standing behind me, saying that Israel treats Lebanese people, their doctors treat Lebanese people, that does not mean that does not negate the fact that Israel invaded Lebanon, and that's a fact. You go learn about this, all right? Don't just negate it. I can't prove it to you, but yeah, exactly. And they still fly their planes over Lebanon all the time. Like, don't negate this just because their doctors treated specific Lebanese spies that they probably put into Lebanon, and then they probably done something for Lebanon. Now for Syria is a disgrace what Israel did. Let me explain why.
What?
Syria has a civil war, yeah?
Okay.
Now this involves this involves Al Qaeda, ISIS, it involves FSA rebels, all right? Now, and it involves Hezbollah, and it involves Iran and America, okay? On the Lebanese border, okay, there's a militant group called Jabhat al-Nusra, an Al Qaeda affiliate. If you watch a Vice documentary, a pro-Israel YouTube channel, by the way, a Vice documentary, you will see that al-Nusra, Al Qaeda affiliated terrorists were treated and taken. So Israeli ambulances went into Syrian territory, brought the injured from out the Al Qaeda affiliated Jabhat al-Nusra, took them to Israel, treated them, and then returned them to fight as rebels. Now, America arms all these rebels in Syria, okay, to fight against their governing body, all right, which is basically facilitating terrorism, all right. But then you're talking about, Syrians are going through a civil war. Well, of course they are, if you've got countries from abroad facilitating terrorism in their country. Now, let's be just. It's not about me, you, Israel, Lebanon, Hezbollah, whatever, guacamole. At the end of the day, yeah, there are, you as a child, to me, I see you as a young man, okay? You are innocent, like, keep your heart innocent. Don't try and assume you know what's happening in Syria. Like, all right, for me, I'm only saying these things because I've seen them with my own eyes. I've done my thorough research, right? I'm telling you, those Syrians, I've been to Syria 9 times. I've been to Syria 9 times before the whole civil war stuff, right? All right. No, but what's by
However, you go over there, you can address each other because you can't have a conversation like this back there. Do it properly. I'm standing out because my legs are tired, but go do it like that because this is not real. You should have a real discussion.
Sit here and have a chat.
Do you agree? Let's do it for real because it's weird.
Israel and Lebanon, do you agree that the
This is
situation
a
between Israel
rebuilding
and
of the
Lebanon is
Camp David
sensitive?
agreement that we're having.
Do you agree the situation between Israel and Lebanon is sensitive?
Well, Israel invaded Lebanon for many years, so
Do you
and took
agree
many
the
prisoners.
situation is
So of course
sensitive?
it's sensitive,
I
yes.
lived on the base
So
of the Golan
you understand why Israel have planes over this area?
Look at these people have tried to defend themselves. You can't be an
Israel
aggressor and cry
It
victim.
doesn't matter.
You can't be an aggressor
The
and cry
reason
victim.
Israel have planes over Lebanon.
Sorry?
The reason Israel has planes over Lebanon.
The reason Israel has planes over Lebanon.
A sensitive situation. We can just leave it
Sensitive
on guard.
situation. Okay. Do they have planes over you? How would you feel?
Over.
Did they invade your land?
They
How would
shoot
you
rockets
feel?
as much as they possibly can.
So you're
Yeah,
saying
exactly.
that Israel should be aggressive because they fear Lebanon. Have you never thought that Lebanon's already been invaded by Israel? Their kids and their families have been invaded. So Lebanon should be afraid. Lebanon should be
You've got
afraid.
Hezbollah, which is an Iranian proxy in Lebanon.
This is where Pavlov.
The Lebanese are a weak government. That's why.
This is where Pavlov is correct. This is where Pavlov is correct. The powerful one who controls the media will tell you that they are the victim while they do their aggressions. Pavlov is correct. Lebanese people cannot cry out to him. They cannot cry out to the international community because they're suffering. Yet the whole world, they're suffering from the aggressor Israel. Yet the whole world believes that Lebanese people are the aggressors, but no, they're the victims. They were invaded twice by Israel. They were invaded twice by Israel. They were invaded twice by Israel, not Hezbollah. I'm talking about Israel's invasion. My point isn't that. My point is to prove that Pavlov is correct. And that's it.
What about the civil war in Beirut? Right, let me speak now. What about the civil war in Beirut? What about the civil war in Beirut? What about the civil war? The civil war in Beirut? Arab against Arab. Hang on a minute. What about the years where Beirut was under siege of its own people? They were street fighting each other. The Arabs against the Arabs. Am I right?
What's your point, though?
When was this?
People fight.
It was a civil war, wasn't it, in Beirut?
What's the point? What's the point?
Right, 1967. Syria invades Israel, tries to attack Israel, yeah? What did Israel take? The Golan Heights.
That's debatable, though. I think
Took the Golan Heights.
Syria invaded Israel.
Let me tell you why
I think
Lebanon.
Israel has invaded the Golan Heights, which is Syrian, and Donald Trump is very funny for trying to.
Okay, but let me tell you, I'm speaking now, you spoke, right. Let me tell you something. The reason Lebanon is an issue for Israel isn't the Lebanese people. The Lebanese government is weak. The Lebanese government doesn't have the strength to look after its own country. The issue is, even today, you have Iranian proxies like Hezbollah. So basically you've got Iran is actually invaded Lebanon. Okay? Well, Iran is out for the destruction of the state of Israel. Israel is defending itself across that border, okay? And it had to close up terror tunnels recently that have been issued by Hezbollah. If Lebanon is such a strong defensive country, then it wouldn't allow this Iranian proxy terrorist group to be building terror tunnels on the southern border with Israel, okay? That's factual. So the issue is, whether you like it or not, the Israelis will carry on flying over the Golan Heights to protect their nation. I have lived in Kiryat Shimona, which is 3 miles from the Lebanese border. Because I lived on a kibbutz there in the 70s.
So you're
there are absolute reasons why the Golan Heights are there as a safe.
You're a settler.
I got a question for you.
Hang on.
You're after her.
Now, what I'm telling you, now I'm answering your point. You made your point, which I accept. I have physically lived there, and I physically lived on the base. I physically lived on the base of the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights are there as one Israel took those, annexed those lands in a war where they were attacked. Secondly, they are a natural defensive border for the state of Israel because they are a mountain range with
and they cry victim.
Israel's a Christian.
Yes.
But what you're not admitting, Lebanon is not its own country. Lebanon is a country that's run by Hezbollah.
Leave Lebanon alone.
You're not leaving Lebanon alone. You're talking about Lebanon.
I'm in London.
And I'm telling you, Lebanon is its own problem. I'm making my point. Hezbollah
Lebanon is currently run by a mixture of Iranian proxy terrorism under Islamic Jihad. They are out for the destruction of the state of Israel. Israel has every right to defend itself.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
That's the fact.
Next point.
Tell me why
It's Lebanon's fault.
Lebanon and everybody feels fine bombing a school with little kids or kindergartens or 2 meters from my house to shoot like what's it called? People. To shoot people just because we're Jewish, just because that Israeli.
Just because you're Jewish. That's
No,
why.
not Jewish. Just because just because it's Israel, just to kill, literally just to kill.
Oh, they just want to kill. They just thirsty for blood. Are they vampires?
You know what? Hezbollah, yes, just to kill. That's what I think. I think also that even Israeli government will never, ever bomb a place with innocent people just because.
You're brainwashed.
I'm not brainwashed. I live reality. I'm not brainwashed.
You're brainwashed by a state. You understand?
I'm not.
No, not the bells, bro. No.
Okay, tell me that. Tell me that.
Have you made your point? Have you made your point?
No, wait. So tell me that. Why do we have such good relations with Jordan and Egypt and not with?
Dictators.
Don't
Sisi's
interrupt.
dictator. Lebanon's a democracy. That's why I have a problem with it.
Jordan has
Sisi's a dictator. Jordan has a king. The Hashemite king. Sisi's a dictator. You can't be friends with Lebanon who's democratic, but you can be friends with the Arab
Lebanon is
dictator.
democratic.
Think
Lebanon
about
is completely
it.
under the terrain of the Syrians.
Thank you very much. Lebanon is under the rule of Syria and Iranian proxies. When Lebanon becomes its own country, it'll be fine with it.
Order.
The Christian militia used to be on that border.
Yeah, well, it's probably something that I've said before, bro. So I don't know. Like, what I want to ask you guys here. You're from Israel, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you're from Lebanon, right?
No, he's not from Lebanon. He's not even.
I'm British.
We're living with your ancestry there.
No, my ancestors are from Babylon.
Oh, cool. So Iraq. Right, okay, cool. Well, anyway, so let's see. I want to ask the question, open question. What do you think is the origin of conflict? Not this conflict. Conflict.
Interests
in general.
Interests that interact with each other.
Right. So you
The
might have
origin of
interest.
conflict is when people don't believe that in Israel, for example, we learn compulsory in school about all different religions, Arabic, English, Hebrew. It's very much the parties now that were elected were across the board. There are Arabs in Israel who are in parliament.
Oh, I know.
Who have full democratic. That is not that's arguments. That's not conflict. Conflict happens when people say your opinion is not legitimate, and therefore we will kill you because you don't agree with what we think. That's when conflict happens.
Origin of conflict. Origin of conflict. Very interesting thing.
That's her side.
So it might be the idea of supremacy. That could come into it. Supremacy of what you want. Like, for example, if you're a sociopath, you don't care what you do to other people. You don't have that empathy connection. You don't have that connection. So you can do whatever you want. You justify it to yourself. It doesn't matter, right? So it's really interesting to me to look at these conflicts all around the world and through history and to try and think what the origins are. The origins evidently are within the human spirit, within the human being. They're part of who we are. There's conflict everywhere. There's conflict right here in this park today. There's conflict on the street in different levels. It manifests in different ways. It manifests in terms of physical altercation. It manifests in terms of physical violence.
Thank you very much for your
No, I have to respond to all of your points.
No, you don't.
I wrote them all down.
We've been doing this for a long time.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Another time. Come to Israel, you'll be warmly greeted. We have great hummus.
Yeah, right.
Apartheid
in Israel.
Do you think
it's a beautiful country,
those
Israel.
points would actually be addressed?
It's not apartheid. That's why they got Muslims. That's why they got Arabs in the parliament.
Yeah, because the Congo's kind of dead.
That's why there's people with hijabs walking across Tel Aviv Beach today.
Okay, go on.
Why not?
There's people wearing hijabs walking along Tel Aviv Beach. Is that an apartheid system, right? Okay,
That
thank
gets
you.
stripped, that gets
No, they don't.
Order.
You've obviously never been there. You've
there
never
was
been
a
there, mate. I
point
can't talk to someone who hasn't been there. Unless you've been to Israel, you don't know what you're talking about. I can only talk to people
Bro, let's do a
who know
spiritual one another time, man.
I've enjoyed talking to you.
Okay,
Anyway,
good.
thanks for you. Cheers.
Good.
Great.
All right, good.
Yeah, it was good. It was good debate. Good debate. Thank you, mate. Thanks a lot. But I respect your view, though. That's fine.
Let's sort this out. The house is in a mess.
I respect it. Yes, ma'am.
No, it's fine. At the end of the day, it's a nice conversation.
Right, Derek, I'm going to have to now.
This was really good.
Can't take away everything.
from your melanin. Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
That these names are now, they should be shunned. They should be, a true Christian of South Sudan should not have that name. Now, I got worried by that, and that's why I grabbed that South Korean man to find out how I can learn ways to be both evangelical and African. And funnily enough, as fate or God would have it, you turned up at the same time, and I saw that you are South Sudanese.